Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Mr. Vice President, I'm going off script again, I know, but I just want to personally thank you. We've been through some stuff. We've gone through some of the most complex military operations this country's ever conducted, and your steady hand and your leadership during those was a great source of strength for me. For your character, thank you for your selfless service. Thank you for commitment. Thank you for being a mentor to me, Mr. Vice President.
It's called the swamp. And you know what happened? And you know what I did? A big favor. I caught the swamp. I caught them all. Let's see what happens. Nobody else could have done that but me. I caught all of this corruption that was going on, and nobody else could have done it. Did I get that one right?
Every 4 years, we gather on these steps to carry out the orderly and peaceful transfer of power. Today's ceremony, however, has very special meaning, because today we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people. For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government, while the people have borne the cost. Washington flourished, but the people did not share in its wealth. This American carnage stops right here and stops right now. The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer. From this day forward, a new vision will govern our land. From this day forward, it's going to be only America first.
This is a president of the United States who is a danger to the Republic.
America first.
He knows he's an illegitimate president.
The oath of office I take today is an oath of allegiance to all Americans.
The great Trump recovery.
America will never be a socialist country. I will fight for you with every breath in my body.
Russia, Russian, pro-Russian, Russian, Russia, Russian, 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 the Russians. Russia,
Russia, Russia, Russia.
And I will never, ever let you down.
A dangerous virus is spreading rapidly in China, and U.S. officials are very worried that it could come here.
This is really the worst attack we've ever had. This is worse than Pearl Harbor. This is worse than the World Trade Center. There's never been an attack like this.
The time for empty talk is over. Now arrives the hour of action. What they're doing is using COVID to steal an election. Together, we will make America strong again. You know what it's about? Fraud, fake ballots. We will make America wealthy again. They are trying to steal the election.
Now, under the leadership of President Trump, we are fully realizing President Kennedy's prescient view of Special Operations Forces.
We will make America proud again. And watch, please, those mail-in ballots. We will make America safe again. And in millions and millions of ballots, their vote is under what they thought they needed. They're dumping more ballots in there, okay? And yes, together, we will make America great again. Thank you. God bless you. If we are right about the fraud, Joe Biden can't be president.
Congress, the chair declares the joint session dissolved.
And God bless America.
The calm before the storm.
What storm, Mr. President?
You'll find out.
Here
here's the moment you've all been waiting for. Here is Devolution.
Devolution.
With Patel Patriot.
The best is yet to come.
Congrats on this. I like this show. The Power Hour. That's got a good sound to it.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Devolution Power Hour. How you guys doing this evening? Burning bright? Just doing
fine.
Just fine. Okay.
Well, the people have a bone to pick with you, I'm sure. I'm seeing in the chat.
What'd I do?
There's tell of more shark comms that you're probably going to ignore. Act like it's nothing.
Well, enlighten me, bro.
I don't know. I'm just the voice of the people. The people tell me that there's more shark comms fresh off the boat. But, maybe I'll find them during the show.
I never said they're not
sure,
comms.
It's all just a coincidence, though.
I never said it's not comms. I said it's super gay if you're going to be the one that's like, oh, hey, look, they're comms, everybody. That's what I said. And you can vouch for that. But maybe they're comms. I don't know. It is pretty random. Has he talked about sharks before?
Yes.
We have seen that he's talked about sharks a few times, so there's a little bit of plausible deniability in that column.
Okay, sorry, I'm going to be adjusting my camera this whole show because
guys, welcome to the pre-show.
That's all we did.
It was like dark. It went dark, and okay, Zach talked me into buying the camera that he has because Zach always looks good. I don't know how he does it. But so I bought it and I have everything I needed. Like there was like 7 different shipments for the charge and all this stuff. But the camera itself, it has to be signed for. And they've tried to drop it off like 4 times now, 4 days in a row. And each time I have not been at my door to I don't know if the guy just like comes and slaps the sticker on the door and runs away because I swear to God, like one time I was sitting there waiting and I somehow missed him.
You were just waiting, waiting for the camera and you still didn't get it.
And I still missed it. Like, I don't know if I went to the bathroom or what I was doing, but in the meantime, I'm just going to be adjusting my camera this whole show.
They take that pretty seriously in Dakota. See, there's been times when around me, I've been told I need to sign for a package, and I'll see these fuckers just like scamper by and throw that shit at the window, and they kind of give you a slight nod to be like, is there somebody in there? I feel like I saw something. And then just bolt.
No. And like, I'm in North Dakota, guys. There's not much for like Amazon theft. As far as I know, I've never heard of it around here. Not in downtown Chicago or whatever. So it is what it is. I'm just going to look.
They should need you to sign even less.
I know.
Unless they think some kind of raccoon is going to come steal the camera or something.
I once refused a package that somebody had fraudulently ordered for us. Like somebody stole our information and ordered an iPhone. And
sent it to you?
They sent
you mean
your
wife ordered an iPhone and then sent that to you after you caught it?
They stole our information and one of my wife's emails, and they used it to buy an iPhone and send it to our house. And I guess they were gonna like pick it up off our porch or something. I don't know. I don't understand how the scam was supposed to work. It may have just been kids who didn't know what they were doing. I don't know. But anyway, my job was to refuse the delivery. That's what we called the phone company and let them know this is fraudulent. We don't want this phone. So I had to like refuse the delivery. So I refused the delivery and I have to sign when I refuse it, right? I sign and say, I'm refusing this delivery. They redeliver it the next day and say that I signed for it, even though I didn't. And I see people saying I need to turn my mic up. I told you guys.
Burning Bread are too loud.
You sound normal to me.
I told you guys we were going to go live. And it was going to sound fine to us, and then we're going to go live, and it would be different, and our audio would be messed up.
I'm listening to it on the stream slightly in the past, and you sound normal to me.
Okay, do me and Burning Bright sound okay, though? Chat? I mean, now I have to wait like a while.
I just listened to me say what I just said, and it did sound a little louder than Kyle, but not a ton. But I think Kyle sounds normal.
Because you guys said pre-show I sounded loud.
You sound more normal.
You did for a time.
Right
you sound
now,
normal now.
Let me listen to you on the stream.
Okay. Well, let's just spend the whole show going through our technical difficulties.
There is much argument in chat. There is much.
Me and you, John, sound about the same.
Okay.
Kyle sounds slightly lower.
Okay. Well, while we figure that out, I'll talk a little bit about what we're going to discuss tonight, and then we'll get to our sponsors of tonight's show. and then we'll get at it. Right off the bat, I want to go through a poll and a narrative that is being set that we told you would be coming. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. We're going to have a brief discussion on the 25th Amendment because there's been a huge push lately with all these cheap fake videos going around and whatever. But there are some conservatives, even if you can call them that are saying we need to be using the 25th Amendment on Joe Biden. Enough is enough, guys. We need to 25th Joe Biden and get him out of there right before this election, while Trump has this massive lead and the entire country's behind him. Let's get rid of his opponent at this moment in time. These people are your enemy. We're also going to talk about an interesting video that came out from this author was writing a book about The Apprentice, I think. And so he sat down with a couple interviews for Trump. And then he went on CNN, talked about it a little bit, and some of the things he said was pretty interesting. So we're going to talk about that. And then they were competing. I guess I don't know if they were competing, but simultaneous op-eds by both Kristi Noem and Robert O'Brien, who those of you who've been watching the show for a while, you should be very familiar with Mr. Robert O'Brien, both on Trump's foreign policy, and Mr. Robert O'Brien's is quite interesting. So we're gonna talk about that as well.
So John, what are your thoughts on Kristi Noem? Not as a politician, but just,
as a human being. I don't know her personally, so I like it's tough to formulate an opinion.
Not like #would or.
Nah.
Because I've thought that, in the Dakotas, if we want an in, I was going to say into the Patriots, you could make that happen perhaps and infiltrate. But now I wonder if that's actually an into the deep state.
I learned a while ago that anytime somebody asks you a question like would or wouldn't you do somebody, you just always say no matter what.
Okay.
So
I know what you're saying.
So good trying to put me in a compromising position, but I successfully passed that test. But what about you?
No, absolutely not. I have no designs on Dakota leadership in any way. There's only like 8 or 9 people there. But more I was thinking it's a way to, if we want a Badlands path to the White House,
you think
perhaps
it's through her?
First husband is a way in, except we have to decide if Kristi Noem is deep state or patriot first, I think.
Maybe you could have some luck with Pete Buttigieg. That'll get you in the White House.
True, yep. Just ride a tricycle around his house. I think that'll get his Jimmy's wrestling.
Little backdoor approach to the White House through Pete Buttigieg. That was a gay joke, guys, if you caught that. All right, I'm going to get to our first, or our sponsor of tonight's show, and then we'll... I hate you sometimes.
Perfect timing.
Sometimes. And our first sponsor is Nelly Lab Sisters and the children's book, so perfect segue. No, but seriously, this book is awesome. I can vouch for it because my daughter loves it. She loves this book series. It's the second book they put out. Author Ashley Nelly and illustrator Sarah Smith want to extend a heartfelt thank you for the continued support of their children's book, Lost in the Zoo, the second book in the Adventures of Bay and Breezy series. Your enthusiasm has been truly amazing. In an industry often dominated by elites and celebrities, it is awesome to see fellow patriots come together to support each other. Let's keep this momentum going strong. Lost in the Zoo, inspired by real-life yellow Labrador sisters, is a charming tale that highlights the importance of nap time and the joy of dreaming. It's a perfect read aloud for young children and an amusing story that resonates with dog owners of all ages. Patriots has helped these gals get to the top of the charts and maybe even on the best sellers list. Purchase your copy today and be part of this heartwarming journey that gets them to #1 on the charts. Visit badlandsmedia.tv/labs. And Brittany Bright, you are from the publishing industry. You are familiar with.
I wasn't born there. I just
you were born.
I've been there before.
You've been there before. It's not easy, especially cancel culture, conservatives. We take the hard route with everything. But this book series, my daughter absolutely loves it. She's 4 years old. She loves dogs. She loves animals. This series is amazing. We've read this book 100 times, both the first one and this one. If you have young kids, if you have grandkids, whatever it is, I highly recommend both this book and the first book from the
John, if you share my screen, this is actually relevant to what you just said. I read this earlier today. The Atlantic has been a treasure trove lately of reverse indicators. Pendulum swings on diversity in publishing. This entire article on the Atlantic today is a whining at the top of their lungs, reeing about how the DEI hirings that have occurred in the big five publishing companies over the last 10 or so years, they're the first ones getting laid off. So they go through all these editors, all these people, and I had said earlier in a different chat, I should check up on the old publishing group that canceled me, you fuckers. But a few of them have come to me over the years, but I'd be curious to check on how some of their publishing deals are going these days, because some of them were definitely hired due to DEI, I would suggest. So
interesting.
I bet they're not doing so well these days.
I bet not.
Yeah, I mean, the essence of a DEI hire is that they aren't qualified for the job in the first place beyond some sort of personal identity politics, right? So when things get tight, when the budgets are constricted, then what is the budgeting department or finance department or whatever you call them, payroll, HR, whoever it is for you, what do? Say who is underqualified for their current position? Oh,
yep.
All right, we need to go ahead and say goodbye to them, and have the people who are qualified take up the slack. It's the very first thing that happens. It's the easiest thing to do. Who's not qualified? Cut them out.
100%.
Totally agree. Interesting stuff. But yeah, get your
hate to see it. You just hate to see it.
I know. It makes me so sad.
Our second sponsor of tonight's show is CB Distillery. So we want to thank both Nelly Lab Sisters and CB Distillery for sponsoring tonight's show. Let me guess, your medicine cabinet is crammed with stuff that doesn't work. You still aren't sleeping. You still hurt, and you're stressed out. That's how it was for me. So I cleared out my cabinet and reset my health with CBD from CB Distillery. It's been a real game changer. CB Distillery's targeted formulations are made from the highest quality, clean ingredients. No fluff, no fillers, just pure, effective CBD solutions designed to help support your health. In 2 non-clinical surveys, 81% of customers experienced more calm, 80% said CBD helped with their pain after physical activity, and an impressive 90% said they slept better with CBD. So if you struggle with a health concern and you haven't found relief yet, get rid of that Tylenol and Advil, make the change to CBD from CB Distillery. And with over 2 million satisfied customers and a solid 100% money-back guarantee, CB Distillery is the source you can trust. You can get a 20% discount to get started by visiting cbdistillery.com and using promo code DPH. That's cbdistillery.com, promo code DPH for 20% off. All right. Are we still working on the mic?
I guess Kyle's slightly low. I don't think it's very bad. I did listen to the stream,
understand.
And it's just slightly lower. Something weird's been going on with all the softwares lately, because the shit was happening to mine, and when I finally found out what was going on, it was the internal settings on my hardware had changed, not on the software, and I blame some of the software.
I don't know the context on this, but I totally endorse this statement from the chat.
I said this exact terminology. Maybe this was Sunday, but I do say this a lot.
Yeah. Anyway, but was it the Pete Buttigieg thing? Probably. Man, I just my freaking camera. If it's not your mic, it's my camera. I feel like I'm red now. Is it somewhere in a black thing? I mean, we gotta.
I don't know. Is this the fancy camera, or do you not have the fancy camera yet?
No, I told you I keep missing it. It hasn't shown up yet. I don't even know if it's fancy. Fine. It's just whatever Zach uses. So it's probably fancy.
I mean, we can all agree that this show is too professional so far. So I think that we need to take it down a few notches.
Okay, how about
get down in the weeds?
We told you guys there's we're gonna get into the actual topic stuff, and I'll just keep messing with my camera on the side. Kyle, you can mess with your mic on the side. We told you guys a while ago that we believe that Joe Biden being the candidate here for 2024 is a form of a Devo proof, right? They cannot get rid of him no matter what they want to do. He's Trump's candidate. He's the Devo president. Bernie Brett, you've said that many times. Even though the establishment and the media, whether they're cut off from intelligence or whatever it might be, they want him gone. They can't get rid of him. We said we'd go through a period of time where the polls would be like drastically, Trump's kicking ass. This is the excuse to get rid of him. Maybe it was the impeachment stuff. Whatever it was, they were going to use that as an excuse to get rid of him. But we said eventually they're not going to be able to do that. They're going to turn, and the polling is going to start to reflect a Biden lead in order to steal the election for him and match the steal later on. Okay. This is from today, from our good buddy over on Fox News. And I say that extremely sarcastically because fuck this guy. Brett Baer, take a listen.
November 3rd himself, Mr. November 3rd.
Yep.
Good evening. I'm Brett Baer. We are releasing new Fox polls right now about the presidential race. President Biden gets his best result this election cycle in the head-to-head against former President Donald Trump. He leads 50-48. That is within the margin of error. President Biden hasn't been ahead of former President Trump in the polls since October 2023. He trailed Trump by 1 point last month. Again, all within the margin of error, a very tight race. When listing extremely important issues to their vote, registered voters in this survey citing the future of democracy at 68%, the economy at 66%, followed by stability and normalcy, then healthcare and immigration, abortion, and guns. This as President Biden is preparing to share a stage with the former president in just over a week, the first presidential debate, which we will cover live right here on Fox News Channel next Thursday night.
The reason I thought this was more significant, I mean, this wasn't CNN. This wasn't, any of those super left-wing, like known left-wing activist news organizations. This is Fox News, which is like the normie conservative news network. And their own poll now, which I've said it many times, I do not trust any polls from any industry. They're all about pushing a narrative. But all of a sudden, the narrative that even Fox News is pushing in their own poll is that Biden has an edge on Trump in the polls. And this is one of those things where you can feel Trump's support right now, and the difference between Trump and Biden and where the voters stand, like it's palpable. And so none of this makes sense. But here we are. We're gonna see more of this leading up to the election. I'm so sure of it. Even after the debates, you're going to see all these debates where they're going to criticize Trump and what he did and all these things. And then we're going to see a poll following each debate. It's like, oh, yeah, well, Trump's performance clearly knocked him in the polls and Biden's lead is growing, whatever. But I wanted to play that and get your guys' thoughts on it before we move on to discussing the 25th Amendment, because they go hand in hand.
I think this is just from the hip, okay? So I'm just shooting from the hip, not based on me thoroughly researching this.
And you got nice hips, man, so this should be good.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. They're a couple inches smaller, actually.
Yeah,
really proud of that this year.
Nice.
Lost like 3-4 inches.
Proud of you, but also a little disappointed, but whatever. I like nice hips.
I'm working on it. First you got to lose the fat, then you build the muscle. That's what I was afraid of.
There you go.
I think Fox News launches that, and no matter who launches any poll, I think Fox News' agenda is to do some damage to Trump and try and make the argument that the damage is because of issues that Brett Baer just raised and because of the conviction he's now a felon. So I think that Fox News is totally doing a political play where they're putting Biden up a couple points, but it's still within the margin of error. So they can still claim it's within the margin of error and it doesn't come off too bad to their primary audience or their core audience, but it's also not that good. So I think that's just what Fox News is doing. I don't necessarily believe the poll, but I also don't think that Trump is all that far ahead of Biden. I don't think that poll is all that egregiously wrong. I think Trump, like if you really come across to averaging the entire country, if you average the entire country, like popular vote, I don't think Trump is like 10 points ahead in polling. Like if you averaged it all.
You really don't think so?
I'm talking about the average of the whole country. So he's going to be way up in Texas and Oklahoma, but he's going to be way down in New York and California, right? So average it all out. Okay, let me ask you, before I make my second point, how far do you think Trump is ahead if you had all the polls, like national polling? How far do you think Trump is ahead by points?
Let's think. I don't trust the polls at all. Like, so
I'm just asking. I know.
I don't use that
how
as
far you think he's ahead.
Well,
you mean if it was a real? You mean just like in the real popular vote?
Yeah.
So if we had an election today with actual like election integrity, like where do I think Trump is at? Like how much percentage of the vote? I would say 65% or higher.
Okay, yeah, I'm more like 60.
Yeah.
We're not that far apart. That's all I'm saying. is that Trump, like what they're representing there is wrong, but I don't think Trump is like 70, like some people putting in chat 70, 80. I don't think it's that far. I really don't.
Yeah.
Y'all are free to think
we
it's
can
that
sometimes
far.
be in a little bit of a bubble.
But I really don't think it's that far when you just consider the entire nation. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. I misunderstood you, I think, then.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. So
must be because your mic's so low, probably.
Maybe. But the other thing I say about it is, Trump is calling Fox News out on this and saying that it's fake polls. And I think that Trump was going to attack any polling from any place that showed him behind Biden post hush money conviction and pre-debate. I think he would call any of those fake. And the fact that it comes from Fox News is maybe them just trying to show a little bit of disfavor towards Trump, ahead of the debate, which is what this is setting the stage for. I view any poll that comes out this week and next week, like I view all of them, they're all trying to set and frame up the debate and then what the fallout from the debate. So they're trying to, that's what's happening right now is all of these entities, we're probably going to see all these entities come out with, here's our poll of where things are going into the debate right now. And they're setting the stage for what they're going to say after the debate when they argue that Biden won or that Biden held his own or that Trump fumbled here, whatever they're going to do. That's what it's,
Yeah.
I think it's the whole point of this. The whole point of this isn't to show, oh no, Biden's ahead or whatever. It's to set the stage pre-debate.
I agree with that. That's where, specifically since it's coming out of Fox, that's the first thing I was thinking about, setting the stage for the debate. If you're just separated from who you want to win or anything like that, or who these media companies actually are backing privately, they want a compelling debate stage and they want to cover a compelling debate stage. And it's sort of like, I always make combat sports analogies with this, but it works with an election because it's a 1v1, sort of matchup that's being promoted. And it's sort of a known thing that if you're following combat sports, if you're a real hardcore UFC or boxing fan, you tend to know that such and such champion is a heavy or light favorite over whoever the challenger is, right? But if you're just on the couch watching a preview come across your screen for the next pay-per-view, the UFC is going to promote every single pay-per-view as if this is a can't miss. You've never seen this kind of challenger before. The champion has never fought a guy with 2 leg kick knockouts in Rio de Janeiro in August. They'll come up with some kind of angle. So the media wants this for the debate stage. They want the public to think that it's close. But to John's point about the fakeness of all this crap, we all think that this stuff's fake. But going away from Fox, if you want to share my screen, John, this caught my attention today when I look for these patterns. So this was Newsweek. Obviously, it's one of the bigger, traffic-wise, it's one of the bigger sites outside of the CNN and the three-letter networks. Donald Trump's chances of winning an election suddenly slide. And I had read this earlier, just, talks about their aggregate polling, the Economist model, all this crap, right? Same day, Axios comes out with this deep dive. Top Dems, Biden has losing strategy. And this recalls the Politico piece we'd done last week, where last week or the week before, where the sort of interior of the Politico sphere, literally writing for Politico, Axios, The Hill, when they do deep dives and write these editorials about what they're hearing from political people in DC, the feeling is abject panic out of establishment Democrats. We even saw, I think we might have played on this show, James Carville about a month ago, doing a rant on Twitter about how nobody's listening to them, right? So what I find interesting is that you've got these polls supposedly hitting this week about how Biden's doing great, being published alongside a continuing cascade of establishment media and Politico writers talking about how Democrats think that he is hemorrhaging support. That Axios feature in particular was kind of interesting because the tone of it was that political experts and polling experts believe that Biden is doing horribly right now in comparison to Trump. but that they believe the Biden campaign actually thinks that they're doing really well. And it's creating this bifurcation within the Democrat establishment. So the last point I'd make on this is that you could actually be seeing a bifurcation here where you've got some of the media pushing the vote blue no matter who, we're going to back our guy, Biden's going to win, while the media that is actually trying to figure out what's going on in an earnest manner is wondering how the hell these polling outlets are actually coming out with this data, because everyone they talk to in DC says that he has no chance right now.
Do you remember, sorry to interrupt you, John, but BB, do you remember several weeks ago, we did an episode of Defected where we looked at a piece by a Dem strategist who was warning about how bad things were for the Democrats and they were headed for catastrophe.
And they weren't listening, right?
It was back in April or March, maybe March. But it was an inside Democrat strategist who was saying that he's trying to warn his colleagues about this and nobody's listening.
They're not listening yet.
And I think that effort of that group that was aware back then and saw this coming has reached Team Biden just as they're planning for this debate. And there's this other contingent who's like, hey, we're ready to replace him if we can create that opportunity.
Right. Yeah, you're seeing a fight.
So you have the strategist, the opportunist, and then you have the Biden core who's like this and like this and like this. And they're just like, and actually, I think they really are like that because I don't think they're in control. Well, so they can't give in to either side.
This is a perfect segue because the next thing I want to discuss is this 25th Amendment thing. The reason I initially posted about it even on Twitter was because I saw people who are allegedly conservatives. I don't remember who it was, but like these big Twitter names, conservatives, who are like, it's time now, guys. Let's get rid of Joe Biden right now.
Yeah.
It makes no logical sense whatsoever. He's been the biggest red pill for anybody. He's helping Trump being there. It's also, we've talked about it many times, it's a Devo proof. Like him being the candidate of the rematch, who knows how this election actually plays out, but him being there for this full term and the guy that Trump is up against makes the most sense. He represents everything that's wrong with the Democratic Party. He represents everything that's wrong with career politicians and corruption and all these things. Plus, he represents everything that's wrong with our fraudulent election system in general. Like he is the perfect representation of everything that's wrong with American politics as the candidate in 2024. It's perfect. We don't want to get rid of him, and they can't get rid of him, no matter how bad the left and the media wants to, the strategists, whatever. They're stuck with him. Okay. But there was let me play this video. So, and this kind of ties into the cheap fake stuff. So there's all these videos of Biden even being posted by like some of the mainstream left is sometimes talking about some of these weird instances of Biden doing something, but in doing so, they're trying to cover for him. Like I think I saw it was either Joy Reid or Maddow or something. They were like, oh, the conservatives are posting this video of Biden getting lost on stage. That wasn't what he was doing. He was just in awe of the cheering he was getting. Then they show the video and he's clearly lost on stage. So they're almost like blowing up their own narrative as they're talking about it. But the cheap fake thing, right? So they are trying to do this to Trump now. Did you guys see what this MSNBC contributor did? Let me share my screen here. Did you see this? Did you guys see this the other day?
No.
So this guy, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. Here's a photo of Trump having to hold someone's hand to guide him off stage. Just like 3 days before this is when Obama had to guide Biden off stage at the debate because Biden was lost. I'm sure this will get as much coverage as the daily Biden old story gets, whatever, right? The actual context of this, let me play this video. Quick handshake. I wish they wouldn't have overlapped that thing, but it was just a quick handshake with his son as he was walking off stage. But the cheap fake thing has really taken a hold of Twitter here these last couple of days. But the 25th Amendment thing, guys, I still, even people in our chat, I think a wild boar. Everybody's talking about, oh, they're going to replace him. They're going to replace him. I do not think they can. I still do not think they can. And I think the fact that they can't and won't be able to is, it lends a lot of credence to the devolution theory. And I don't know if you guys want to talk about any of that, but there is one like 3-minute long video that I do want to play. And I saw somebody posted it in a Rumble rant here, talking about replacing Joe Biden after the DNC, which I think is interesting. I think we should take a listen to it, but I want your guys' thoughts on other stuff first.
my initial thought on the first of all, the cheap fake thing is kind of bizarre. Me and Chris were laughing about it just as an aside on Story Hour, that I was kind of trying to read into what is the branding here? Like why have they come out with a new word, a new term? None of us have been talking about cheap fakes, and it seems to be the suggestion that they know they can't call something like what happened at the G7 summit. I know there was the incident with Obama where he was let off the stage, but there was another one the same weekend where he was at G7 and Biden was supposedly turned around talking to a paratrooper. That was the official word out of the Biden team. But according to what it looked like, you had Ursula von der Leyen, or you had Marine Le Pen, or Ursula von der Leyen. I think it was Ursula von der Leyen who had to go grab him and corral him and bring him back to the G7 group. It wasn't this one, but
I'll just play this in the background while you're talking.
But at the G7, he was doing all this stuff, right? So they can't say that these things are fake because they're not fake. They're real. So they're trying to come up with a new term in real time in the War of Stories to say. So when they say cheap fake, they're not actually saying that what you're looking at is fake. If you kind of parse into what they're doing this Orwellian newspeak where they're saying, well, it's not so much fake. It's just that the narratives that are being spun about the videos are fake. So it's like a cheap shot that people are taking at Biden about these videos. So it's a cheap fake, not a deep fake. And what they're doing, the reason me and Chris were laughing about it last night is they're kind of doing what we say, where we talk about how there'll be some sort of there'll be some sort of video like what you just showed with Trump, that then a bunch of fake stories will come out about. And that's what the media is now trying to say. On the subject of him being replaced, I agree with everything you said in terms of it's a Devo proof the longer he remains. It's a net positive for us. I don't think it's wise, and I don't think you guys, dismiss anything completely out of hand. I don't think it's wise to dismiss the idea of any of these things happening. I think sometimes the interesting thing here is that we can be right in our logical analysis that it doesn't make sense for the Dems to try to get rid of him. It doesn't make sense for the deep state to replace him. If Devo is in effect, they probably can't replace him. But if they do, then the only way they could is basically through what I would call non-linear means, a non-linear event. And the key word I would use is chaos. And so even if they do, it's even worse for them than if he remains the candidate, because they would be looking at some sort of non-linear event. The most literal version of that would be Joe Biden no longer being here among us. And then other ones would be the Democrat establishment coming out and saying that he's not healthy enough. He doesn't get cleared or something like that and can't be the candidate. So I think those things are possible. I just think if they do that, it's even worse for them and better for us.
I mean, anything is possible for sure, but sometimes you follow logic where it takes you. Justin, what do you got?
I think you're looking at the real Joe Biden, and he's acting old, and he's going around and doing silly things in order to create all of this hubbub. And I think that possibly this thing over cheap fakes and whatnot is being spun up, not necessarily intentionally by anybody. It could be, but I kind of feel like it has its own entropy just because the internet is the internet. And when one thing, I think this feels to me like something that is spun out of control on its own. And everybody's just
there are headlines about it. There's some like Axios headlines.
Yeah, but then I think the media is responding to that.
Yeah.
So I think there's like this back and forth happening between like influencers and online people and the media. I'm not really sure it's coming from somewhere and has a purpose, unless they are seeking to like seed the idea of deep fakes of Joe Biden out there because they're expecting some videos to come out that aren't good for him. And they want to be able to put doubt in people's mind that they're real. So
I think
I could see that being the angle here, but I can't tell that actually is.
I want your take on the 25th Amendment thing, but I believe the origination of the cheap fake is actually from Karine Jean-Pierre or whatever. She's the one who coined the term, and I think a lot of conning Twitter, it was ironically saying it.
But the week or the week or two before this, people were talking about deep Biden deepfakes involving audio with special counsel Hur's report. The Republicans were.
Sure, that's right.
Right.
Well, let me play
So-
this quick.
Okay, go ahead.
And I think you all have called this the cheap fakes video, and that's exactly what they are. They are cheap fakes video. They are done in bad faith, and some of your news organization have been very clear, have stressed that these the right wing critics of the president have a credibility problem because of the fact checkers have repeatedly caught them pushing misinformation, disinformation. Take, for instance, this video where the president is clearly trying to pick up a quarter.
Okay, well, I think there
So-
after that first part, but
So her
that is
previous
projection.
hairdo looks so much better than the hairdo that she is wearing now. I don't think she got good advice with that one. That was not a good move. She needs to go back.
But what she said there is insane, because think of what they've done to Trump and like all the selectively edited quotes and everything that they've taken out of context for Trump. Like, I think even on Saturday's Power Hour, I played a clip where, Trump was actually making fun of them. He like said something. He's like, now watch, the mainstream media is going to take that out of context. And just a couple minutes later, like Biden Harris HQ on Twitter had, a little picture with in quotes of Trump saying something. And it's just perfect because that's exactly what they do. So it's all projection by them, but they can't cover for Biden anymore with these gaffes and these errors. And this is how they do it. They say that they're selectively edited cheap fakes. But anyway, continue, Kyle.
Yeah. On the 25th Amendment thing, I'm in agreement. I've always said that Trump said it would haunt him. He never said that it would remove him. And when you're haunted by something, it never actually happens. It's something that is always present and causes you anxiety, stress, disturbs you, robs you of peace, whatever. So that's what a haunt is. And so I think that it's going to haunt him and always be there. And I don't even know it necessarily is going to be there overtly by Congress. Maybe it's going to be there as in the Devo team just uses it as a threat to keep Biden doing what they want him to do. I don't know. I don't really think it works that way, but I have no idea who's going to threaten him with the 25th, because it seems like it's not a possibility that they could actually get it together and make it happen. So, is it going to come? Is Hillary the one who's going to haunt him with it because she's constantly lobbying people to use it against him? I don't know. Maybe. Well, the stories of Hillary coming around and wanting to replace him and of that dim plan to replace Biden, that's stuff we were talking about on this show, prior to early days of DPH. We were talking about Hillary, right? And that she's not going to walk away. She's not just going to be oh, guess it's over and I lost and the Patriots are going to win and my little empire is crumbling. She's going to do everything she can to try and stop it, even if that means doing extremely unlikely, low percentage things that would get her to try and get back in power, right? Her only option is to get more power. Yeah. She's losing power every day and Trump is gaining power every day. So she has to find a way to gain power. I would not be surprised at all to see a contingent push her to replace Biden, it not work, and it actually
then they've damaged everybody.
And they've damaged everybody.
Well, here's the thing. Let me play the video quick of Trump saying the 25th Amendment thing and haunting him. And keep in mind when this was. This was from January 12th of 2021. It was after J6. It was right after J6 happened. There was a push from Nancy Pelosi calling on Mike Pence, hey, you need to 25th Amendment Donald Trump. And this is what he said.
Free speech is under assault like never before. The 25th Amendment is of zero risk to me, but will come back to haunt Joe Biden and the Biden administration. As the expression goes, be careful what you wish for.
One thing that's interesting about that, too, is Trump says that confidently. It is of zero risk to me. If anybody is familiar with how the 25th Amendment works, you need the vice president, and I think it's a majority of the members of the cabinet to sign off on it. So the vice president, Mike Pence, would have had to initiate it, and then a majority of cabinet would have had to sign off on it. I think it's
wouldn't that have been easy, John? Because didn't Trump surround himself with just deep state sycophants?
Right.
Well, this is my point.
Mike Pence.
Yeah. So Trump is very confident, saying there is zero chance. It is zero a threat to me or whatever. The 25th Amendment. He would not be saying that confidently if he thought Mike Pence was a traitor. This is right after he's saying Mike Pence didn't do the right thing, all the whatever of certifying the vote. but he's not worried at all about Mike Pence 25th Amendment him. But when it comes to Biden, it would require Kamala, whatever her name is, Harris, to invoke the 25th Amendment and then the majority of the cabinet to sign on. It doesn't matter what Congress wants or does. It is, unless
it's
she
more
can't
feasible
do
than the other scenario. Is all I mean. Like in the narrative, I actually like the way you just laid that out, Kyle, with the Hillary stuff, because in a manner of speaking, it's nothing new. Like you said, a couple years ago, we were talking about this stuff. Obviously, if you followed the Q drops, the change of batter comms, I know that comes up all the time. It makes sense that it comes up. Like this is, we're at the bottom of the ninth, right? This is when it would happen. When do you swap one out? I think about those quotes too, and I try to sort of apply them to what's going on. But it is interesting to parse what Trump said there. And it could be that he's talking about a literal replacement attempt with Biden and a betrayal of his cabinet. It's also possible that Hillary sort of situation was actually a bit of a calm to the deep state outside of the halls of power, outside of the Biden administration. Because if you're right about devolution, and if we're right, even though we might disagree on how active a participant Joe Biden and the Biden family are in this disclosure operation, we all agree that they're controlled. We agree that, if you want to use the Chris Paul analogy, sort of like the playpen, them in the deep state department, they're sort of hemmed in by devolution. So they're no threat. The deep state that's outside of the halls of power, they know what the situation is, right? They know that Joe Biden, at the very least, is not under their control anymore. So as Kyle said, obviously the true deep state wants him replaced. So Trump could be commenting there on the fact that the deep state are going to be the ones trying to pull the strings throughout this presidency to get him out of there, but ultimately they haven't been successful. And ironically, as we talk about with the Devo proof, the reason that they haven't been successful is because devolution has been protecting both presidents. It's been protecting the one who abdicated, and it's potentially protecting the one who's in there right now, even if he doesn't know it. Even if Biden isn't an active participant in this operation, he could still be being protected by it.
Sure. It makes you wonder the level of control. Number one, but even going back to 2020, it made no sense for them to run with Joe Biden, because if they had run with anybody, and we've said this so many times, if they had anybody with even just a slight sense of charisma, could formulate a sentence, anything, they could have passed off the stolen election, and it would have been like, okay, yeah, it makes sense. But you can't do that with him. What?
I'm not bringing up Hunter being an asset, but I kind of am bringing up Hunter being an asset because the FBI knew about that meeting. That article just came out that the FBI knew about that meeting, and they got all those documents from Devon Archer, right? And they knew about those meetings with Burisma and all that stuff that was being set up with Liechtenstein and Cafe Milano. They knew about all of that in 2016. How did they know so much way back then in 2015, 2016?
Kyle, is there any actual evidence that Hunter is an asset?
Yeah.
There might be evidence, but not proof.
Yeah, evidence, not proof.
Okay, but there's no hard proof of it. There's no facts in the court document anywhere saying. It's just your theory, right? Still. This is funny.
It's not. I will say it's not as strong as. I can't make as good of a case of it as I can for Trump.
Okay, what do you mean? Trump?
I have more evidence of Trump. I have more evidence. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You brought it up. I just had to ask. I was going to ask that last week, but I didn't, and I regretted it, and so now I did. But anyway, I want to play this video because we're in crunch time. If they are going to switch out Biden, my thought was their last chance was going to be the DNC convention in August, and then ironically, this whole Ohio ballot fiasco took place, and now they're actually going to be swearing in or not voting on Biden and the Biden Kamala Harris ticket early here in July, or maybe even end of June. They're going to vote them in early to make sure that they're on that Ohio ballot. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is even more interesting. We're not even going to give you the chance at the convention to switch them out. Like we're going to.
Is that the whole reason they did it like that?
That's what I'm thinking. Like that's what I said like weeks ago. That's why it's fascinating. Like they're voting him in early, so they can't switch him out. But there's this video on Twitter. I do want to play it, and I only listened to bits and pieces of it, so I don't know if we'll listen to the whole thing. But this is a pretty good account. It's Shipwreck Show on Twitter at Shipwreck Show. She's a pretty good job. I've seen a lot of her stuff. She's pretty smart. I want to hear her take because this is talking about if they're going to replace Joe Biden, they'll wait until after the DNC in August or until the ballots are printed, and here's why. And I think we should listen to this reasoning.
Be ready for a July surprise. It's very possible they pull Biden and sentence Trump to prison on July 11th. The entire race could be just about to change, not July. And just a side note in this video, even if Trump does go to prison, he can still run for president. He can still get votes. He can still be on the ballot. But that's for another video.
By the way, for those listening on podcast, Podbean, or wherever you listen to your podcasts, she was reading a Charlie Kirk tweet there at the beginning, talking about the July surprise. That was Charlie Kirk, not her.
Won't be July. It'll be August, and it'll be after the DNC convention. Stuff like this a lot. And so I really kind of dug into it because I was of the mindset that it was almost kind of too late. Like we already had to have the delegates. You already had to have all of your, we're kind of at endgame. There are rules, and there is lots of them, and they change between the parties. So the DNC and the RNC have completely different rules on how this is supposed to go. So the DNC is going to hold their Democratic National Convention during a roll call or a Zoom call in Chicago, Illinois, and that's going to be done August 19th through the 22nd in 2024. The expected pick for this is going to be Joe Biden. Has all the delegates. He's won all of the things that he's needed to win. He's where he is. This is who they expect him to be. And that's probably going to happen, okay? Why would they wait until the National Democratic Convention? Because if something happens to Joe Biden before the DNC convention, then they got to do they got to do the primaries. They got to let the people come and pick. You have to get your delegates again. You got to go through all of the rules and regulations to be president again. Whoever gets elected into that spot to replace Biden, right? But if they do it after the DNC, then that gives the power to the Democratic Party. And it's the same thing with the RNC. If something were to happen to Trump after the Republican National Convention, then the RNC gets to pick. And then they just get to put somebody in. They get to skip the whole process of states and delegates and all of that crap. And they just get to put somebody in that spot. But wait, there's more. So the DNC then would inherit the power to choose the replacement. Rules for governing who that person should be. The nomination would not, for instance, just go to the former nominee's running mate or the person who won the second most delegates in the primaries. They just need to get the majority of the party members to vote for them. So it could be anybody. It wouldn't necessarily automatically be Kamala or the other person running in the race. They're on Minnesota. I can't remember their name. But this is where it gets super interesting. Let's say he gets the DNC convention. He's put in there. He's going to run. He's going to do the debates. He's going to go all the way to the day that the ballots are printed. But then after the ballots are printed, between then and election day, he decides to drop out or something happens. His name's already on the ballot. In that scenario, millions of Americans would cast ballots for an inactive candidate with the understanding that their electoral college votes would really go to somebody else, probably somebody designated by the DNC or the RNC, depending on which party it was. Something happens to Joe Biden, okay, between the day that the ballots are printed to election day, the people that would go in and vote for Joe Biden are understood that there are going to be other people, electorals, that are going to take that vote and apply it to the person that they pick or that is there to replace them. That's the way that I'm understanding this. They're going to remove Joe Biden. They're probably going to do it after the DNC convention. If they do it before, then you got to do the primaries and you got to do all that shit.
So the logic is interesting because I've always wondered, like, what if somebody like dies or something in the lead up and they replace him or whatever as a candidate,
right,
but all the ballots are printed. I don't agree with it though. I want to play because it's a different thought process of him being replaced after the DNC convention. The fact, again, I want to show this article, the fact that he is being voted in early, Biden to be nominated virtually before the convention in order to get on Ohio's ballot. To me, this is proof that they're making sure that they are stuck with Biden and he's going to be the guy all the way through. But I mean, the way that video, the logic in that video, it does make it sound like they could technically replace him at any time. And so maybe that is something to look out for, but he'll be on every ballot. That's my understanding.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I just think it's unwise to dismiss something like this, right? Like I think all three of us agree that it is unlikely. I mean, if I gun to my head, I don't think that this is because it's not because I think, oh, it doesn't follow the process. To me, that's not a compelling argument. There's no process for this. I don't find those arguments compelling. We're in this mess. Many of us believe we are in this mess literally because we have been subverted by a deep state cabal that by definition has taken or subverted the will of the American people, right? Do we think that the 2020 election was done by the book? Absolutely not. So when we're looking at like primaries, and I get it. I mean, I get that technically there's these rules, but there's rules right up until there's an asymmetric or nonlinear event that means the rules get tossed out. The reason I don't think that they'll do it is because I try to engage with this stuff as the enemy faction mentally and think, what would be better for you? Now, if they believe he's a devolution candidate, then that would, and what Kyle laid out about Hillary Clinton, they would want to remove him. Now, we would think the Patriots wouldn't want them to. The only reason I leave a sliver of a chance of this being possible here, I think Patriots would have to allow it to happen because I don't believe that the sanctity of the DNC process or the primary process is what's going to keep him from being swapped out. I would think it would be more Devo team. So the only sliver of a chance I can give this event from happening is there a scenario in which Patriots could think it is beneficial for the purposes of awakening for something like this to happen? And I can make an argument if I try to and say the scenario she lays out there, it almost made me think of, you're looking at sort of a really condensed timeline window of August, September, October type of thing, right? If you're in like an 8 to 10 week time period where the establishment media has to pivot from trying to push the geriatric Biden against Trump, which is already difficult enough, to trying a live Game of Thrones scenario where all of a sudden you've got Kamala Harris, Hillary Clinton, Gavin Newsom, like you'd have a free-for-all. You'd have blood in the water sort of free-for-all situation going on, where I understand the argument she's making that the DNC, the delegates would essentially select somebody, right? They would coronate somebody, but the media would all be in a frenzy because they wouldn't be on the same page, I don't believe, of who that would be. Because some of them are Clinton loyalists, some of them are Obama loyalists, some of them are Newsom loyalists on the West Coast. So if I wanted to engage with it, could that be beneficial for awakening where you've got Trump, the DOJ going after Trump, and Trump is consistent. He is the voice of MAGA. He is the voice of people who are voting red down the ballot. And then on the other side, you don't have Joe Biden. You have just a free-for-all of Democrats trying to prove that they're the ones who should get the votes. So again, it's possible. You can't dismiss it. It would just be even better for us.
Yeah. If I could see them trying to switch somebody out, if I'm being honest here, where I think it would be most effective narratively, and by effective I mean it would lend credence to the awakening. Okay. Mm-hmm. The biggest narrative red pill for swapping somebody out would be if they try to swap Trump out for somebody at the RNC convention, like somebody like DeSantis. That would be some bullshit, and that would piss some people off, especially after, depending what happens with the July 11th, hearing. We'll see. But but there's two topics here. There's two different distinct topics. It's the 25th Amendment thing, like them trying to remove Biden as president right now, and then there's the 2024 presidential nominee. Yeah. And they can't remove him from either situation. And that's what I think is most interesting. Like, it's one thing to remove an incompetent president, which they can't do. It's another thing to not even nominate him for a second term. And it's like they're pushing for both. And they don't know which one they want, but they want them both, but they can't do either. And that's what's fascinating about this whole thing.
So right before we started playing that video, I kind of had like this aha moment about them moving this. And my aha moment was thinking, oh, all of this chatter about replacing him may have come up, and it's getting into the media now because of not just the debate coming up soon, but because of the thing with Ohio and the Zoom meeting to confirm him. The schedule shifted. The schedule of when they were going to try this play, if they're going to try this play, has shifted because of moves that Trump and Biden have effectively made together.
Right.
Because Biden pitched out this debate idea, and what did Trump do? Sure, sounds good to me. And so Trump, I want to point this out. Trump did Biden a favor in a way we didn't realize at the time, because he changed when this debate is happening, which allowed it to be earlier, which gave them the excuse for the Ohio Zoom thing, which fed into that. And it's Biden's last chance, according to the naysayers on the left in the media, to prove that he can remain on the ballot. He needs to have a good appearance at this debate, which, what did I ask last week? What is tactically the best thing? Do we need Biden to be destroyed in this first debate, kind of even, or do we need Biden to kind of win a little bit? That's something to think about.
It's
if you're
got to be
Trump,
it's got to be at least a fight if you want him in longer.
I think Trump can't destroy him in this first debate. I think Trump actually has to play it. He has to hold back just a little bit to allow Biden to still have a little bit of an argument to stay in this thing. Because and I won't share my screen right now, but as we were listening to that shipwreck show clip, I was going back to that Daily Mail article, and I was looking at the names, and I was looking, where is this talk of replacing Biden at the convention, or before or after? Where's this coming from in this article that went viral? And it's coming from Mark Penn, who's a Clintonite. It's coming from James Carville, who's a Clintonite. It's coming from, there's one other guy, Joe Klein, Clintonite. It's coming from the Clinton world. They're putting this out there. It's not even a trial balloon. It's like, hey guys, we have this ready to launch. We have this ready to launch, and we're putting this out there in the media. We're leaking this to the media so the media knows.
Hillary's like, put me back in.
We're standing by to deal with this should Biden fail miserably at this debate.
But I see exactly what you're saying. But also my counterpoint would be, if we're in a devolution scenario and they're stuck with Biden no matter what, I don't think it matters how the debates go. Like, I think if anything, it's like, make it as clownish as possible. All of these, the media is going to spin it however they're going to spin it. Doesn't matter.
Sure.
All that matters is the court of public opinion, and I don't think you want to leave any doubt that this man is completely incompetent. Like, you don't want any instance in any of these debates. Like, the best case scenario to me would be, you have this one debate, they're lined up for multiple. You have this one debate, Trump wipes the floor with him, and then Biden drops out of every other debate, but he remains a candidate, and all these other things leading up to the election. That is my wet dream.
Okay, and then Hillary team makes their play. It still fails despite Biden doing so badly, and it makes it look even worse. I could see that.
You know, actually, that back and forth there makes me, the tension between the Clinton regime and the Biden regime, protected ironically by Devo, as John just mentioned there. It really does harken back to one of the refrains in the drops. What is it? Death of the D Party, right? Or end of the D Party. However it was framed there, but it's, that's one of the most famous kind of things that people have been talking about since the original drops in 2017. Permanent death, permanent demise of the D Party. And I think that we've conceptualized that and sort of, we've been watching it play out, right? We're like, the Democratic Party has had a horrible run. They've looked bad. But this would be a public, how much worse could it get for the Democrat institution as a party if it, besides a circular firing squad leading right up to an election?
Kimberly in chat, thank you very much for reminding me. We have SCOTUS opinions coming out tomorrow and Friday.
Immunity.
Nice.
So what if another stories about replacing Biden are going around is because they know SCOTUS is going to give Trump immunity, and that J6 case is not going to take him out or damage him in any way before the election.
Oh,
so what they're looking at is that, well, Alvin Bragg's case doesn't do enough damage and isn't going to keep him from the White House. Jack Smith's cases are falling apart. SCOTUS is about to decide the immunity thing against us and for Trump. Biden can't beat Trump, we can't run the same steel we ran in 2020. We got to do something. Desperate, cornered animal, man. This is cornered animal stuff.
Sorry, go ahead, John.
I was going to say, that reminded me, Kyle, of Norm Eisen if you guys aren't following him on Twitter, like I follow the enemy on Twitter too, just to like see what they're saying. He posted this today, and I read through it. I'm not going to read through the whole article because it's super long, but there was some interesting, like, are we boring you, Burning Bright? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Now that we're reading actual thing. But so this article here talking about SCOTUS, what was fascinating, and I read through it, but he's talking about how they're shielding Trump and all these things, and how SCOTUS has delayed like every single one of his cases. Like every time Jack Smith is asked to like, let's rush this thing, let's do this thing so we can get a trial before, the election, whatever, SCOTUS has been the one that's kind of been pushing it off. Them and Eileen Cannon, and they point everything back to the Federalist Society, which I thought was interesting. But then also in here, there was something, let me see if I can find it. What is it? What do they call it with the redistricting of electoral maps? Is it gerrymandering?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, here. They were talking about how SCOTUS, basically, because of if the maps would have remained the same as they were in 2020, like the midterms, the Democrats would have had either a majority or just like a 1 seat difference after the midterms instead of like the 4 or 5 that they had. But because SCOTUS overturned some of those cases, it gave the Republicans a larger gap, which I thought was very interesting. Kyle, you should read this article, and
Okay,
I want your take. But there were some instances of devolution in here, but from a liberal leftist perspective, which I think is. So I'll send this to you, and maybe we can discuss it more in depth next week.
Okay. Yeah.
But anyway, Bernie Bright, you were about to make what I'm sure is a thrilling point.
I don't remember what it was going to be, but it
God.
was probably going to be the best point I ever made, and the most succinct, I bet.
And probably most Switzerlandish.
No, I think it, just related to the Clinton stuff. I think that it's the perfect scenario of never interfere with your enemy when they're in the process of destroying themselves. Again, a lot of this stuff is going back to the drops, and a lot of the drops are not just about, we think there's a military intelligence operation related to Q. It's that there was a lot of universal truths and philosophies in those Q drops related to game theory. So we always talk about that this is exposure, this is a disclosure operation, it's about the awakening. Well, if you've got, right now, it's, as Kyle pointed out, it's a bit clandestine, the sniping going on between the Clinton old power Democrats and the current regime. How bad is that going to be for the standing of the establishment in the collective mind if that goes hot? And maybe it is truly a mix of the Supreme Court decisions making them panic, making the regime candidates, the outside candidates, I should say, the Clinton regime and the Obama regime get spooked. But then it could be that the debate is an inflection point that makes them go hot, makes them go public. Because if it is, it starts to lead me to the direction John mentioned. If it is something where Biden kind of gets his ass handed to him on TV, it would just prove all of the panic that's been going on in the media establishment right, that might be the opening that the Clintonites think they have to go very public with like a hot sort of op. And patriots would love that, right? Because they get to sit back and be like, you're not getting them out of there, but go ahead, go at them, like have at them all you want. And they might even let them believe that they can get them out of there. And then for some reason, they keep hitting this. It's like devolution is the invisible barrier in a video game when you try to go off the map, and they just keep bumping into it and trying to swim around it, and they can't.
It's so true. I do want to show a couple things, and then we should do the boosts, bring back from last week, and then we'll get to the second half of the show here. But these are like how the SCOTUS has tipped the scales. I'm just going to read the headlines of the first couple of these. And the reason I think it's interesting, because I speculated before that it's possible Trump went to SCOTUS with something like devolution. Like if you're going to implement something like devolution, it's not out of the question that he might have gone to like the majority conservative SCOTUS and been like, hey guys, this is what I'm going to do. This is the evidence I have, just so you're aware. And who knows? But how many times they've shielded Trump from accountability for the J6 case and the conspiracy to overturn the results of the 2020 election. Again, all from a liberal perspective, shielding Trump from accountability in the documents case, the Fisher cases. And then this is the one, gerrymandering the 2022 House midterms. Had the midterm elections been conducted using the 2020 maps, or the maps federal courts ordered states to use before the Federalist Society justices overturned them, either Democrats would have held their House majority or Republicans would have won by at most 1 seat. And that's what I thought was interesting. Like these cases overturned it. And so Republicans had a bigger majority, which has slimmed down a little bit since. But could you imagine where we'd be if they had the House as well? We wouldn't have the Weaponization of Government Committee or anything we've gotten from that. So just thought that was interesting. But yeah, we'll maybe discuss that more in depth next week. But Bernie Bright, you got the boosts? Can we quickly go through some of those from last week? And for those not familiar, the boosts, if you are not watching live, you can leave a boost, badlandsmedia.tv/support, and we will read them on air during the show.
You guys have been killing it on boost lately, by the way. We've noticed, and we appreciate it.
We do appreciate it.
Mima Hunter sent $17 over last week and said, after Defected, Story Hour, Cultural Heretics, and when BB is on Liberty Den, Wednesday DPH is my favorite Badlands show. Did I read that last week? I think I might have.
Did you do that on purpose?
What do you have to say?
What do I have to say?
That's what the boost said.
Yeah, that was from last week, I thought.
All right. I don't think I read Our America 45 sent $10 over, but it's a very long boost about John's grammar being bad. And it's not really a joke. Like, I get it. People will send us boosts or send us rants, and it's okay when there's a disagreement and stuff.
Motherfucker.
I'm just not into, people throwing a tip and then like tearing apart somebody's personality, but in a very loving way. So not into that. Like, maybe you have good intentions or anything, but it's kind of bullshit, and you should fucking shut up because it's annoying. So there's different tones involved with that kind of stuff. So
yeah, let's not read that one. Let's not read that one.
Yeah,
and if you don't like
appreciative of that kind of thing,
if you don't like my grammar, one, you don't have to watch. Two, you should go start your own show, do it regularly, and see how perfect you are. Because
yeah, I know it's a small one. It's just there's other ones that come up, and again, we can take it. We've got thick skin, but there's a different sort of thing when it's like we've had them on Defected, we've had them all over the place. The problem with this person on your network, and it's like just don't watch. or send us a boost that we won't read. It is what it is. But thank you for watching either way. Lionheart sent over $50, much appreciated. Good evening, gentlemen. John, love the new Devo series. You're doing great idea, as I hate reading. Regarding Hunter conviction, I see it more as a small red pill suppository for the masses. Can't go ramming a giant one in there off the bat. God bless.
We could try. But
you get it where there's a will, there's a way. Pete Buttigieg would find a way, Lionheart. Thank you, though. C. Meadows sent $10 over. Have you seen the Trump 2024 movie released prior to the 2020 election? It's the reason I now watch DPH. When I saw the movie title, I felt Trump knew the election would be stolen because if he won in 2020, he wasn't eligible to run in 2024.
What movie?
It just says the Trump 2024 movie released prior to the 2020 election.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know. I don't know what that's in reference to. If anybody has information, post in the chat. C. Meadow sent another one over for 10 for BB and JH. I believe it was a DPH episode where you said if Trump mentioned sharks in F1, you'd know Trump was listening. If you want to triple down on this, bring up Mook on DPH. If Trump were to use Mook at a rally, there would be no denying it.
Okay.
That would be a good one because
that would be a good one.
Like Mook is something Trump could say because he was a New York guy and everything. Yeah. So Trump, come on.
The media would jump on it. The media would jump on it and like try and say he used some sort of slur, I think, and they would embarrass themselves.
And Brad and I would get our wish, and the word Mook would come back into the zeitgeist with power.
Yeah.
And,
what would be great? Instead of us having to like decode Trump's speech and like, oh, this might have been a hat tap, just reshare one of our show links. That would be all we'd need, and that would be the perfect hat tip, in my opinion. Then there'd be no doubt.
Here it is in the form of like a comment. But we want like a real one.
I mean, we did get the Badlands. It's a hell of a name. Yeah. But it's been a while since we've got like a direct one,
Yeah. They're probably still mad because I said that if we got a retruth right after that episode, I was going to frame it, and I didn't because I tried to use a technicality and say that it wasn't a direct retruth.
Yeah, that's true.
So
we still should have framed it. Maybe once we
Or if you want an easier one, Trump, if you're still talking about sharks, just delineate the subspecies, say tiger shark. Like if we get a tiger shark, then we'll know. Not just a generic shark.
That's too good, too.
I'm just saying.
Oh, Scavino, make it happen.
UKQ Patriot sent $5 over. What concrete evidence is there of foreign interference in the 2020 election? From what I've seen, the steal was mostly mail-in ballot fraud by U.S. citizens. Who did Trump declare war with in order to assume the wartime powers needed to implement Devo?
Great question.
Yeah, if you go to it'd be addendum 4, that draft executive order. This is, because you're right, there hasn't really been direct what I would call proof of foreign interference. It's been a lot of speculation, and even Trump, like in a lot of these cases that he's had with Jack Smith, he's talked about election interference and all these things. He's referenced Executive Order 13848 and on foreign interference, but he hasn't talked directly about foreign interference other than this direct draft executive order where he says, and you can go to devolution.link and find it, where he's talking right here. Again, this is the order that was never actually signed, but there is evidence of international and foreign interference in the November 3rd, 2020 election. Dominion voting systems and related companies are owned or heavily controlled and influenced by foreign agents, countries, and interests. The forensic report prepared by experts found that the Dominion voting system is intentionally and purposefully designed with inherent errors to create systemic fraud and influence election results. So yeah, I would say it's mostly in the machines, but you could probably even stretch this. It all depends. Like the president of the United States basically has the leeway, I think, to interpret it however he sees fit. And could you count money coming in and like funding ballot operations as foreign interference? Like, I think his definition, there's probably some leeway to it. I don't know. Like, none of us on this show, nobody in existence, at least that's doing Rumble shows or interviews or talking about it, knows exactly what Trump knows. Nobody, there are no insiders. So we're just guessing with a lot of the stuff.
Your point about the definitions made me think of the clip that you've played often of Trump talking about illegal psychological warfare operations, campaigns conducted on American people. Like, even something like that is pretty interesting because
Don't forget, this persecution is being done by the same weaponized agencies that for 7 years have been running illegal psychological warfare campaigns against the American people.
Psychological warfare, right? Illegal psychological warfare campaigns. So now, do I think that there was foreign interference? Yes. But even besides that, to John's point about leeway, you've got a president right there saying that he knows there are illegal psychological warfare campaigns being waged on the American people. That makes him a wartime president, right? If they prove that that's what's going on, and then where was that funding even for those warfare campaigns coming in from? We've got organizations, we've got George Soros, we've got organizations like Media Matters. We literally know that we have foreign funding going into media operations in the United States and into the lawfare in the US.
Yeah, and that's something that, with the weaponized agencies, like those are domestic, but it's still very interesting. We just don't know. We don't know what Trump knows, but we have enough to know that there's something bigger going on, and we kind of speculate on some of the reasoning or where he draws his authorities from and whatnot, or justification from.
One more boost.
I just wanted to say, I was trying to remember what all came out in the docs. Maybe it wasn't the docs case. Maybe it was the Jan 6 case with Trump, because they filed that discovery motion, and a lot of it had to do with stuff that was still classified related to interference in the election. There was a whole section of that motion to compel discovery for some classified stuff. He wanted classified stuff from every agency who had material in the election, and it acknowledged reports that Trump had received about from agencies about their concerns about interference in the election, foreign interference. So I think there's more out there than we know, and the reason I think that isn't just because people talk about it, and like what I experienced in 2020, it's because Trump's lawyers have put it in filings asking the government to turn it over in discovery in his case.
But they haven't, right? Like, so none of it's public.
They haven't. It's not public yet, but they've asked for it. So
one more boost comes from Kirsty, $17. Badlands Media rustling jimmies since 2023. Actually, late 2022. We were rustling jimmies then. This rehomed reformed Canadian would buy a T-shirt with that on it. I officially became a U.S. citizen in 2018, so I could vote for Trump. Nice. Mrs.
Nice.
Bright
That's
moved
awesome.
to the U.S. in 2018. When did she become a citizen?
Is she a citizen?
2020. I think it was 20. Maybe it's 2021. She is a citizen. I should probably know that, but I don't know when. I've got Canadians in my house, not just the one I'm married to, and we're trying sort of a rewilding project for them. We're seeing how they acclimate to freedom, and if you expose Canadians too severely to freedom, it's like a shock to the system. So you can really scare them, and you got to be careful with it.
Do they know you're doing a show right now? Are they pro-Trump?
Sleeping.
There.
They should be by this point in time.
Are they pro-Trump?
No. But they're not as anti-Trump as they were. I'd say on a scale of like 99 anti-Trump, they're probably at like a 82 these days.
That's good. I mean, it's progress.
Mm-hmm.
But they are from Canada, so it doesn't really matter.
Exactly.
Opinions. Okay, let's get to the next thing here, and this was an interesting story that came out today regarding Trump. So this is on Badlands Media's website. If you aren't aware, we do post some of our own. We do our own news aggregation. Allie Tucker does a great job posting some of this stuff, and it always links to the original article. So it takes you to the Hill, and then the Hill talks about the CNN interview. And I'm going to play this whole thing here. So this guy, he's an author. He was doing a book, I think, about the Apprentice. He interviewed Trump multiple times, and what he says at the very end of this clip is what's interesting. But it is a 2-3 minute clip. We'll listen to the whole thing.
What was he like? What did you observe from him when you sat down with him?
So I interviewed Donald Trump more than any other journalist since he's left the White House. We started in May 2021, and that report you just talked about meandering and confusing is right. He goes from one story to the next. He struggles with the chronology of events. He seems very upset that he wasn't respected by certain celebrities in the White House, and then he'd go to a story about The Apprentice. So as you know, Caitlin, it's very challenging to interview Donald Trump. And
I just want to say, like, clearly CNN, Caitlin Collins, they're going to spin this to basically describe Biden, but just replace it with Trump. Like, it's fascinating to watch, but you'll see more of it.
To go toe to toe with him, but there was some cognitive questions about where he was and what he was thinking, and he would from time to time become confused.
Because you wrote at one point about Joan Rivers, him telling you that she voted for him in 2016, I believe, even though
confidently told me and declared that Joan Rivers voted for him when he ran for president, and Joan Rivers died in 2014.
Sorry, isn't Joan Rivers the one who said that Michelle Obama has a penis or something?
Yes.
Yes.
That's interesting.
The original Mohap.
Dude, he said she voted for him because the dead voted.
Yep.
I bet that's why he said that. He was like,
that's a great point, man.
Joan Rivers died in 2014, so she would not have been able to vote for Donald Trump.
Yeah, and because you talked about his memory, you wrote that, on some days I have the feeling he has no idea who he's even talking to, that he actually forgot or didn't remember that the two of you had spoken at your first sit-down interview.
Right, so my first sit-down was in May. He wasn't doing a lot of interviews, and then we sat down again towards the end of the summer, and when I sat down, there was a very blank expression on his face, so I asked, do you remember when we spoke recently? And he said, no, I have no memory of that. And he couldn't recall. He said it was a long time ago. And then we had to start from scratch. So the interview started from square one, where he started telling me the same exact stories that I heard in our first interview. So from there, then we did more interviews so that we could cover more ground. But it was a little bit like Groundhog Day.
Kyle is probably laughing like this because we did a whole deep dive a few weeks ago on the Time magazine article about Joe Biden, like the answer to it was like the compliment to the Trump one they did a while ago.
Yep.
And it was all about how he kept saying the same stuff and repeating the same stories, and he kept offering them cookies. And
yeah.
They were like, we were about, like at the end of the article, they're like, we were about to leave. And then he offered us another cookie and started telling a story. So
oh my God.
You're right. I mean, this is more literal. They're just reskinning recent deployments about Biden and just layering Trump over it. But if it's true that Trump did that, it's a hilarious troll to this guy to just be like,
Yeah.
I don't remember who you are, so I'm just gonna say whatever I want to you again.
I feel like there's another story recently where Trump did this. He's like, I've no idea who this guy is. Like, I don't know the relevance of this person. It was somebody else, but that makes this
Tim
more
Pool,
interesting.
he kind of did that.
Tim Pool, that's what it was, and I did appreciate that. But so like we've talked about how the media is like disconnected now. So like Time comes out and does this thing where they're telling how Biden doesn't like, it's not cognitively there. He's offering cookies, all these things. And now CNN is like, we need to tell the same story except about Trump. So we need this like irrelevant author to come in and retell the same story. That's funny, man.
Yep.
We keep going here.
Yeah, and the Trump campaign responded saying that Trump was aware who this individual was throughout the interview, but this writer, this is their words, not mine, I'm just the messenger, is a nobody and insignificant. So of course he never made an impression. What were your biggest takeaways from sitting down with him? Right after he left the White House, when his political power is probably the lowest it's been since 2015, and how he reflected on when he was hosting The Apprentice, and the ratings were soaring in that first season.
I'm sorry, it's like that's classic Trump.
Exactly.
That's so funny.
Exactly what I just said.
Awesome.
I mean, real question though, who has more testosterone at the desk right there? Can we get live T-level checks?
Who do you think has the bigger micro penis out of these two?
Yeah, it's a tough one.
And just
the
kind of
title
what
of the
that
book
looked
and everything is weird too. I mean, we've talked about
Apprentice
that.
in Wonderland.
Apprentice in Wonderland, Through the Looking Glass.
Through the Looking Glass.
Yep.
like for him.
He was very deflated. He was conflicted. He was angry about the way in which the press had treated him. He still believed that he won the election.
As the press has treated him unfairly in this interview.
And he was happiest when he talked to me about hosting The Apprentice. It was the thing that brought him the most joy. We watched clips of the show together. We watched the theme song, and he really lit up. He watched his firing of Omarosa. And then he would talk about what he did at the White House, and he would become gloomy and resentful and unhappy and refer to Afghanistan and Joe Biden. But he also seemed to think that he still had some foreign policy powers. And there was one day where he told me he needed to go upstairs to deal with Afghanistan, even though he clearly didn't.
He told you that
Wow.
while you were interviewing him at Trump Tower, he told you he needed to go upstairs to deal with Afghanistan?
With the, quote, the Afghanistan is how he referred to it.
I mean, it's
Yeah, there's
remarkable.
only one, man.
Oh, so like,
That's hilarious.
you have to
It
wonder
takes
if
a swerve at the end.
you have to wonder if any of it is true, right? Like, so
Mm-hmm.
right off the bat, a lot of it sounds like bullshit. Like he's painting a picture that him and Trump are like sitting on this couch just watching Apprentice reruns, and Trump's just like lighting up, just reminiscing about his days on The Apprentice. Is that true? I don't know. It reminds me of
Well,
that.
it makes sense.
It reminds me of that story where we talked about it on a Saturday Power Hour, but Chris had brought it up from back in like 2016 or something, or maybe it was 2018. But the story of Trump like sitting in front of the TV and wanting to watch gorillas like beat each other up or something. Did you guys ever see that story?
I don't remember.
I don't
Okay,
recall this.
I'll try to find this. Just give me. This will take me a minute because it's on my. Maybe not. I haven't posted a whole lot lately, but anyway, at the very end, he talks about Trump having these. He's still doing foreign policy stuff, and that, if true, is something we would consider a little devolution-y, to say the least. But I'm going to find this while you guys.
Well, BB and I did go over an article about this guy on the most recent Defected, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was the most recent Defected, yeah. And we had a great time. We had a fantastic time reading this article. There's many little hints in it that just make you, there's just many dasting things about this book that this guy has written. But our my takeaway from it, and I think BB largely agreed with me on it, is that the purpose of this book and this author here, and the purpose of the media giving attention to it, is they're doing a post-mortem on how they allowed Trump to to reinvent himself and market himself to the American people with The Apprentice show. So this isn't exactly a hit piece on Trump. It doesn't seem like the book, or at least not as portrayed with what the media is doing with this book right now. It seems like the real intention here is to target people who were responsible for making The Apprentice a thing and allowing it to become a popular TV show in America, because doing that allowed Trump to introduce himself to the American people as the person that they then voted for in 2016. So they're very much blaming directly and like kind of shaming by name in the article, at least
in the Atlantic,
in the Atlantic article, the people behind The Apprentice is like, you guys messed up and you're to blame for Trump being relevant to this day and putting our country through this.
Well, with that framing, Kyle, isn't it kind of funny that Trump, let's just take this guy at his word that even though we think his framing is off, that the events he's describing occurred as he's describing them, right? Like
Sure.
He's not just like, he had these sit downs with Trump acted in this way to him, etc. It's actually pretty funny because just like we think and talked about Sunday night, that there was more to The Apprentice. Obviously, all three of us talked about a couple of weeks ago that it was the debut of the Donald character. But then we also talked about The Apprentice being a really useful sort of deployment in and of itself, not just to launch that character, but to there was quotes taken out of the book where they talk about everything being bugged, the mics were always hot. That's one of the lines we loved out of that article.
Yep.
That Trump had said, the mics are always hot. And he was referring to the set of The Apprentice. But we kind of talked about, the Batman, the Bruce Wayne of it all.
And where was the set of The Apprentice, BB?
In Trump Tower, right?
Right.
So he was talking about the mics were always hot. Who was he inviting onto that show? How was he wielding influence? And so we think there was more going on with The Apprentice show besides just introducing the world to the Donald. There was actual ops going on there. But what's so funny is when you fast forward to today, and let's just say that this guy is recounting what happened from his experience or perspective accurately. Trump probably gets a kick out of watching a media member attempt to do a retrospective on a show that this media still doesn't understand. So he still gets to talk to them and be like, yeah, I love it. And again, all of the things that this journalist is saying about Trump lighting up about The Apprentice, I believe him. I believe that that's true. But they think that Trump is just like reliving his glory days when he was on a TV show, when really, if The Apprentice is more than they think it was, Trump is sitting there going, you fuckers still don't understand what's been going on here. You still don't understand why you're losing. You still don't know what The Apprentice was. You don't know why I'm still this popular and why we're going to win again. And I got to go deal with Afghanistan. And he knows that this journalist is going to take that as some dementia-addled or just Trump bluster when it was probably literally true that he went upstairs and took a call about Afghanistan.
Yes, and one last thing. The interview started in May of 2021. So that's before the Afghanistan pullout. So I just can't help but think that that is a true story, and Trump really was having to go deal with the Afghanistan upstairs in Trump Tower.
I like how you phrased it as pullout instead of withdrawal. But so two things. First of all, knowing Trump, like Trump is very good at portraying himself as a caricature of what the media wants him to be. Mm-hmm. And so I could totally see him like when he's talking to certain audiences, right? Like maybe conservatives or whatever, conservative journalists, he might sit down and do a serious interview or whatever. When he sat down with Logan Paul, he was like funny, he was engaging, he was portraying himself in a way that to reach younger voters. Yep. When you're sitting down with a clown like this guy, I could totally see him like playing into all of the mainstream media leftist bullshit to the nth degree, just so that he goes on CNN and talks about all this stuff like, oh, we had to start over from scratch because he didn't remember anything and he's cognitive, whatever. I could totally see him playing into that just to feed into their bullshit so that when they talk about it on air, it's so clownish. But I did find this excerpt. So do you guys remember the book Michael Wolff put out, Fire and Fury, inside the Trump Trump White House? So this came out in 2018. The excerpt I'm about to read, it wasn't actually in the book. It was satire, but it was posted before the book was published and everybody believed it. And it was just so funny because everybody believed it. So I'm gonna read this quick. This isn't actually in the book. On his first night in the White House, President Trump complained that the TV in his bedroom was broken because it didn't have the Gorilla channel. Trump seemed to be under the impression that a TV channel existed that screened nothing but guerrilla-based content 24 hours a day. To appease Trump, White House staff compiled a number of guerrilla documentaries into a makeshift guerrilla channel, broadcasted into Trump's bedroom from a hastily constructed transmission tower on the South Lawn. However, Trump was unhappy with the channel they had created, moaning that it was boring because the guerrillas aren't fighting. Staff edited out all the parts of the documentaries where guerrillas weren't hitting each other, and at last the president was satisfied. On some days, he'll watch the guerrilla channel for 17 hours straight, an insider told me. He kneels in front of the TV with his face about 4 inches from the screen and says encouraging things to the guerrillas like, the way you hit that other gorilla was good. I think he thinks the guerrillas can hear him. But what's so funny is like Politico actually did an article about how so many people fell for this Trump guerrilla channel parody. This is like honestly like porn to the mainstream left. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, even though it's bullshit, it was just so funny.
That is funny.
John, you must indulge. You must indulge this clip. Because what we're talking about of what Trump does is perfectly exemplified here.
This is going to be totally irrelevant, I bet.
It's just like a minute. This is exactly what Trump did during The Apprentice, before The Apprentice, with Epstein, with the Clintons, with all of them.
Nice car. You should see my other one.
He's done something the police have never done.
You can't take the law into your own hands.
At least he's getting something done.
Bruce, help me out here.
Huh? Well, a guy dresses up like a bat clearly has issues.
But he's put Falcone behind bars.
And now the cops want to bring him in, so what does that tell you?
They're jealous.
Sir, the pool is for decoration, and your friends do not have swimwear.
Well, they're European.
I'm going to have to ask you to leave. It is not a question of money.
You see, I'm buying this hotel and setting some new rules about the pool area.
I don't know.
That is literally what he was doing. Like, the gorilla thing is obviously silly, right? But there are so many less silly and believable interactions that these media members talk about, and these politicians, these socialites who turned on Trump after he declared his candidacy, who used to schmooze with him. It was the exact same. It's the Bruce Wayne template when they're like, yeah, he was kind of just this playboy. He was a womanizer. He didn't really have interesting things to say in conversation. Meanwhile, what was Bruce Wayne doing in that conversation? He was seeing where the 1% of the 1% of Gotham City stood on his recent jailing of Carmine Falcone. He wanted to see which of them seemed upset that Falcone was in jail and which of them seemed happy that Falcone was in jail, because he wanted to see which of them were still on the take from the other mob bosses in Gotham City. And then he leaves. And it's like, people think that it's unrealistic, but it's absolutely describes how Donald Trump he rubbed elbows with the Clintons, with Epstein, with everyone. He was pictured with everyone. There is not a famous socialite, celebrity, politician in the 80s and 90s that you cannot find some connection or interaction with Donald Trump. Usually in his domain, usually where he wanted to have the interaction. And then years later, they all think he's just this doofus who's fallen ass backwards into one of the most extraordinary success stories in American history. Oh, and the presidency.
Yep. Okay, I get
100%.
it. I get it. I don't know if you need the clip to say all that, but I get it. Okay, let's get to our final topic here, because it's just interesting. Okay, so both Robert O'Brien and Kristi Noem come out on the same day with op-eds talking about Trump's foreign policy.
It's not just them, by the way.
What?
There were others.
Well, I'm sure that, but what's funny about this is like, well, who else did them?
Ben Rhodes, on the exact same day in foreign policy, did one that's the opposite of Robert C. O'Brien and seems to be a response to Bryan's, or a counter to it.
Okay, that's
and
it.
If you don't recall, that's Obama's NSA. So you have Obama's NSA versus Trump's NSA on the exact same day, writing about the exact same topic in foreign affairs. And then you have Kristi Noem in American Greatness. I'm sorry, John, I've interrupted and taken your spot here.
No, that's okay. Well,
you did ask me, and then the fourth one is Ratcliffe. John Ratcliffe has a piece in Real Clear Defense about the same topic. Or about
what was his called? Can you send me a link to that one? Because what I thought was so funny about this is like both of these are almost titled the same thing: A Return to Peace Through Strength, and then Peace Through Strength by Kristi Noem. And it's like Trump came to these two and he's like, "Hey, listen, VP, final homework assignment. I need a foreign policy op-ed. Let's see who does better, and like just go." But Kristi Noem's like, it's not bad, but it's like short.
It's not great.
It's not great. American greatness.
It reads as uninformed in terms of somebody who would have been close to these things.
Yes, but Robert O'Brien's is freaking incredible.
It's great.
It's great.
It's super good, and there's a lot of actual like insights that you can glean from this, which we're gonna go through some of these. Let me pull up.
I will say, both of you, as a little aside here, both of you have talked about in our VP discussions, just in your fantasy VP discussions, Robert C. O'Brien, and after reading this, I felt the most strongly about that. Because when you guys both said it, I was like, I mean, I guess, sure. But after reading this, I'm like, this kind of felt like an audition and one that I would happily sign off on as a voter.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. when it comes to the VP stuff, like obviously, Pence has been my first choice. Just like, hey, let's do the three-peat, return to the ticket. But in terms of devolution, like anybody from the Devo team or pretty much a former cabinet member, I could easily see being the guy. And Robert O'Brien has been near the top of that list for a while, probably right behind Mike Pence. And I mean, think of it. He was named as the National Continuity Coordinator in Executive Order 13961. This is the guy that we thought like, hey, he might be the guy running the Devo stuff right now. We know through some friend of friend stuff that he's got Secret Service details still, which it's not unusual for a president to be allowed to extend Secret Service details to cabinet members, but it's normally only for like 6 months. And we're like years into this now, and he still has it. Like we got an update on that not long ago. But not only that, he is traveling around and he is discussing things with foreign leaders. Like he is talking to foreign leaders on behalf of Trump. And that was one of the things that I wanted to like get from here. Not only is he having conversations with Trump himself routinely, but it's almost like he's having foreign policy discussions with foreign leaders on behalf of Trump. And that's what I thought was most interesting. So Kyle, you're really good with the foreign affairs stuff. Like, do you want to give your thoughts first while I find the quotes that I'm looking for?
Sure. So what I really think is happening here is I think that Noem and O'Brien both are auditioning to be VP, and they're making their case for themselves with things like this. And this isn't the only thing. Trump isn't just going to, I mean, I don't even know if Trump's going to read Foreign Policy Magazine. He probably is not going to read it, right? But they're still making the case for themselves and trying to see how much attention, and there's probably going to be some reaction here. I do think Ben Rhodes is very specifically trying to counter Robert O'Brien's piece by talking about how important it is to go with Biden and basically he says that everything bad that happens during Biden's term has been because Trump's left it very bad for Biden, which isn't too far off in some manner of thinking that we like to have some every once in a while. You know, like there's a way you can make that argument, and we do occasionally. But Robert C. O'Brien's piece, I think, is very good because it's making the case for Trump as the peace president. That's like the entire thrust of the entire article is that Trump is the peace through strength president with a Jacksonian flair. That's it. He has a Jacksonian flair. It's peace through strength. It's what's good for us is good for our allies, and what's good for our allies tends to be good for us. We need to know our enemies and know our allies. We need to keep our enemies in check and keep our allies in check. We should put America first. We all love the idea of free trade, but we've noticed over the decades it doesn't seem to actually be free or fair or equitable or even good for America. So it's time to change some things up. And that's the whole thing. He says, one of my favorite lines of it is that Trump has, quote, Trump has never aspired to promulgate a Trump doctrine for the benefit of the Washington foreign policy establishment. He adheres not to dogma, but to his own instincts and to traditional American principles that run deeper than the globalist orthodoxies of recent decades. And
Love
it goes on and on. He has so many great lines in it that have just a little bit of eloquence, like that one does, a little bit of craft, but not over the top. It really strikes a good tone of being like a position paper. Like he goes like, this is our position on the Middle East. This is our position on Israel. This is our position on NATO. And he makes the argument, dare I say, for regions of responsibility, because he focuses in on how the Trump doctrine, if you want to call it that, was, hey, yo, NATO, get your stuff together, defend your own region. Yo, Middle East, Iran's the problem. Deal with them because they're the one causing all the turmoil. The rest of you, Israel, Saudi Arabia, everybody else who wants to have a prosperous Middle East, get together. Abraham Accords are there for you to use for that purpose. And like he uses this line in there somewhere about how Trump's foreign policy was one aimed at creating peace and regional responsibility from Kiev to Kabul.
Yep.
And I'm like, I read that line and I was like, that's the regions of responsibility thing. And it like, I just think it's a great piece and everybody should read it. And I would not be surprised at all to see O'Brien as VP. I'd be shocked if O'Brien is not in Trump admin V3.
For sure.
You want to think of it.
Well, a couple things I want to point out. So first of all, like the Jacksonian flavor, like you mentioned, that just reminded me of those pictures that Scavino posted way back on December 19th. It's in part 8 of my series. You have the Lincoln one. I think it's Chamberlain and then Jackson in the background of this one. So I thought that was interesting. But like you said, there's so many quotes in this article that are they're Devo-ish, right? Like, so this one right here, America first is not America alone. It's a mantra often repeated by Trump administration officials. Like I've heard of
sovereign alliance-y.
Yes, it's very sovereign alliance-y. And then we even get into some Saudi Arabia stuff, which we'll do that in a second. But there's another quote here. What did I look up earlier? Officials. Oh no, hold on. So there's a quote where he talks about. Gosh dang it! I just had it. It's basically how oh, I lost it. What did I just search?
You searched office.
I think it's this one. Okay, officials. Okay, so like right here, O'Brien admits that he's talking to officials in the region. Critics suggest that Trump's calls for U.S. allies in Asia to contribute more to their own defense might worry them. On the contrary, my discussions with officials in the region have revealed that they would welcome more of Trump's plain talk about the need for alliances to be two-way relationships, and that they believe his approach would enhance security. He's admitting to violating FARA, which isn't that what they kind of took down Flynn for? Like he's admitting in this article that he's going out and talking to foreign leaders on Trump's behalf, which is that's number one. Another one, and BB, if you have any points you want to add in, you can feel free. But another one is with when he's talking about Ukraine and ending the war, he gives away Trump's game plan here. Biden doesn't seem to have a plan to end the war. Trump has been very like keeping this close to the vest, and clearly O'Brien knows how Trump is going to end this war, or his plans to end the war. Whether or not he actually reveals it here is one thing, but let me read it. Trump, for his part, has made clear that he would like to see a negotiated settlement to the war that ends the killing and preserves the security of Ukraine. Trump's approach would be to continue to provide lethal aid to Ukraine, financed by European countries, while keeping the door open to diplomacy with Russia and keeping Moscow off balance with a degree of unpredictability. He would also push NATO to rotate ground and air forces to Poland to augment its capabilities closer to Russia's border and to make unmistakably clear that the alliance will defend all its territory from foreign aggression. Whenever Trump talks about ending the war in Ukraine, he's like, I would have that thing done in 24 hours. Yeah. And that's like all we get from him. And he's like, but if I tell you the full plan, then like it would ruin it or something. But here is O'Brien. If this is legitimate, he's like just said what Trump's plan essentially is.
That was, I wanted to mention the Russia stuff, so this is a good segue. First of all, I think there's a little bit of kind of kayfabe in there, or I should say like dropping of the kayfabe. I agree with you, John, that O'Brien's kind of giving away the game here, but he's giving away more than the plan. He's giving away that if you're giving away the plan, then we already know how this movie ends. And I wanted to loop in, we'll go through obviously the rest of the rants at the end of the show, but this one popped up during this discussion by Melindy. Said, not gonna lie, I've gotten about a third of the way through the O'Brien piece. His takes on Russia are disappointing, to say the least, or do y'all think it could have been edited to lean toward Russia bad? I think that this is all by design. You know, one of the things that I think gets lost sometimes, when it certainly has been lost for some people that have heard me talk about Righteous Russia, but maybe didn't read the arguments in it, or when we talk about peacemakers, when we talk about the Sovereign Alliance, the way I framed it in part 4, in order to make peace, you must have the threat of war. So there are people who conflate and think that we're saying Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin are going to be seen as friends when he becomes president or before. That is not the case. That is not going to happen. Vladimir Putin, the story, is going to continue to escalate, with Vladimir Putin increasingly doing what he wants to do. And O'Brien gives away the game there when he says Trump's going to have a measure of unpredictability. I mean, this reminds me of Catherine Herridge predicting a Black Swan event and then defining it word for word, right? You have completely dismantled all possibility of that occurring because you are predicting that thing occurring, which we think are comms. These are little hints that we get in these narrative deployments. So when O'Brien's sitting there being like, listen, Trump's going to go in there and he would totally arm NATO and Ukraine to the gills, and Russia doesn't want to mess around with him. He's going to maintain an air of sort of unpredictability with Putin, but he's also definitely willing to go to the table with Putin. And what's he going to do when he goes to the table with Putin? He's going to probably force Zelensky to sign the very document that Putin held up this weekend at a conference, showing the media, showing the globalist media. He was literally daring the Western media to publish the peace proposal that he originally gave to Ukraine. And that is what's going to happen. And the story, though, is not going to be that Trump and Putin are friends. The story is going to be that Trump carries a big stick, he gets into the White House, and Putin respects him, and Trump gets all the parties to go to the table. But the story the American people are going to be told is that Putin was on the verge of striking deeper into the West, and Trump is the one who stopped him. So when you see this framing out of Trump's cabinet members, they're going to sometimes come off as borderline hawkish toward Russia and China, because even right-wing people in the United States, the normie layers, they do not like Russia. They do not like China. That you think that we're going through sort of a rebranding of what Republicans are and what conservatism is in the US. There is a lot more deprogramming that has to be done down the line about Russia and China. And Trump is not going to waste his time deprogramming the conservative base about Russia before he's president again. He's going to allow that to play into the story. So this is not a contradiction. I think it's par for the course, and it's beautiful to see.
Well, it's also interesting. So in here, he talks about Trump's policy of making allies not alone, whatever. We saw today or yesterday, Putin met with Kim Jong-un, right? And they apparently agreed to some sort of strategic partnership. Mm-hmm. And Douglas McGregor, who again he served as an advisor to Chris Miller in the waning days of Trump's administration. So he's a key figure. We've looked at him many times, but he's saying that the treaty provides for mutual assistance. And he puts this in quotes. The treaty provides for mutual assistance in the event of aggression against one of the parties. And so when you look at, all the threats against Russia from NATO, from Joe Biden, like if we were to ever put boots on the ground and go against Putin, this is essentially saying that North Korea would also step in with their poop balloons sending.
I go one step further, John. The reason that this is such a brilliant narrative deployment by Putin and Kim is because that quote there is literally Article 5 of NATO, right? Yep. That the Western media has been programming everyone in the West into thinking is a good thing, a mutual defense pact. They have spent the last 2 years programming the West into the belief that a mutual defense pact is an unassailably good and moral and logical framework through which to effect treaties. And now that Putin and Kim are saying, you know what we're going to do? We're going to have a mutual defense pact so that in the event the West attacks one of us, the other one will step in. So he's literally threatening to put an Article 5 together amidst a coalition of Eastern Bloc nations in a mirror of NATO. And then one more point on it would be, what's the key there that the media didn't seem to pick up on for some reason? In the event of aggression against these nations. So the media right now is having to program their readers into the belief that Russia committing to defending its sovereign territory against a Western attack is somehow a bad thing, while they've spent the last 2 years doing the exact opposite. It's hilarious.
For sure. Kyle, do you have anything on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I really didn't understand. I read the article like twice, and I really didn't come away with it. I didn't have a problem with anything he wrote about Russia.
I think it's just that he frames them as potentially adversarial, which is all part of what Trump does too. You know, it's like they're not calling them an enemy. They're just saying Trump would go in there and negotiate hard with Russia. But yeah, it's not like he's calling them.
He went much harder against China.
He did, which I understood. It didn't strike me as being, actually it didn't strike me anything about what it said in here about Russia as being incorrect or off base, because it literally is true that you can draw a direct line from the fecklessness of the pullout in the summer of 2021 in Afghanistan to the decision by Russia to attack Ukraine. That's true.
Yeah.
And that's definitely the story that patriots are trying to tell the American people, right? And then the last part, there was a part in here that I think maybe could be open to a misinterpretation, where it says, quote, such a move, meaning, okay, wait. Washington should make sure that European allies understand that the continued American defense of Europe is contingent on Europe doing its part, including in Ukraine. Makes sense. If Europe wants to show that it is serious about defending Ukraine, it should admit that country to the European Union immediately, waiving the usual bureaucratic accession protocol. Such a move would send a strong message to Putin that the West will not cede Ukraine to Moscow. But Moscow doesn't want Ukraine.
Right.
If Moscow wanted Ukraine, they would have had it.
Yes.
They would have had it a year ago. So like this is like the thing where like saying it this way causes your brain to accept the straw man that Russia and Putin are after all of Ukraine when they're not. They're after Luhansk, Donetsk, Crimea, and dealing with the Azov battalion who have been harassing those areas, right?
They're after Russian territories. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you, Kyle, that's what is short-circuiting people. I think that they're allowing that. So basically, I think that because Trump and O'Brien and his people, it's not that they say anything outwardly negative about Russia that confuses some of MAGA. I think it's the Ukraine point you just made. It's that Trump and his people say, we're going to stop Russian aggression against Ukraine, which is a funny version of doublespeak, where they're telling you the truth. But the irony, as you pointed out, is that Russia is not being aggressive toward Ukraine. So what is Putin's proposal? It is for Ukraine to cede the 4 territories, 5 if you include Crimea, to Russia. Because why, everybody? Those territories voted in 2 referendum to join the Russian Federation, which Zelensky said he was going to abide by, which he did not, right? So it's going to be funny because, like you said, the story is going to be that there's been some negotiation and Russia gave some and Ukraine gave some. That's not what's going to happen. Russia is going to get literally 100% to 0% what Russia wanted. But the story is going to be that Donald Trump has stopped Russian aggression against Ukraine, which was never going to happen, right? So I think that's the short circuit in there.
Well, one more thing about North Korea and Russia. Does anybody think that Russia enjoys having a CIA proxy state on their border that has nuclear capabilities and a pretty weird government monarchical despot structure?
No.
Like,
So they'd want leverage there.
They would definitely want to have some leverage there. And
Mm-hmm.
Russia having this agreement with North Korea kind of indicates to me that maybe China has changed, because it was China who controlled North Korea. Like they controlled everything that happened in North Korea. China, it was like North Korea was like a Chinese CIA proxy state, right? I wonder if China's kind of backed off.
Yeah,
CCP, let's say. I wonder if after Trump and Pompeo's visit, if maybe now that's allowed for Russia to kind of step in and be like, you know what, we're going to go ahead and kind of keep an eye on this nuclear situation over here.
You know what?
And make it a little bit more stable, because North Korea can't like pull itself out of the situation it's been in on its own. It needs other nations to help it join the century that we're in.
You know, putting the actuals aside, like I don't think any of it. We can talk about what we think is actually going on, or what may actually be going on all we want, but I don't think we know all the details. The biggest thing to me when it comes to what the Trump himself and people like O'Brien are talking about in these op-eds or whatever, it brings me back to the Higgins memo, and something that I have to remind myself of quite often. And it's this right here, this quote, from an operational preparation of the environment perspective, President Trump is operating in a battle space that reflects the left's vision. This is something I think we all need to be cognizant of.
Yeah.
Trump has to operate narratively in a battle space that the left and the media presents to the normies and to Trump. So when Trump is talking about Russia, he knows more. Him and Putin might actually be stablemates. There might be a plan going on behind the scenes, but in a narrative warfare, you still have to operate as if that's not true. You have to operate within the battle space that the left and the mainstream media present you. And so then we get narratives or talking points such as what Robert O'Brien portrayed, which isn't like, oh my God, why would they say nice things about Ukraine and not bad things about or whatever? Yeah. It's because he's still operating in the battle space that the left presents. We talk about this all the time with the vaccine. Trump could have came out like with the truth about the vaccines, all these things, but no, the mainstream media and the left were presenting it as this deadliest pandemic of all time. Everybody needs to get the vaccine. When Trump tried to cross that bridge, he got destroyed by it, the hydroxychloroquine stuff, whatever. So he has to operate within that battle space and those parameters, and that's what he does so very well at this point. It was perfect.
It was perfect. I mean, it's a great framing in the Higgins memo there, and I've said this on some recent shows in different contexts, but it's all kind of the same thing. It reminds me of that truism in the Q drops: the choice to know will be yours. I think when Kyle rereads that section of O'Brien talking about Ukraine and Russia, to your point, John, with the left battle space, with the left framing, you can read that little graph, and it seems to them that O'Brien is saying, we're going to take a really firm, strong stance against Russian aggression, right? When you read it from our framing, we know that there is no Russian aggression. So Robert C. O'Brien is not threatening Russia there. He's just saying, if there's Russian aggression to Ukraine, we will be firm and strong against that, right? But we know it's not going to happen. So they're not lying. This is one of the things that actually, took some time for me a while back of being like, are patriots kind of being misleading? They're not. They're telling you the truth. It's just up to you how you're framing. What framing are you taking into that battle? One more point on Putin and Kim, to the point that, you just made, Kyle, about Russia having North Korea on its doorstep and regions of responsibility. I know Ghost was getting a kick out of this. From a pure narrative perspective, the meeting between Putin and Kim, it was genuinely like heartwarming to watch. It was very, if you don't just go in with ma Russia bad, ma Korea bad. The vibe was a young leader in Kim being around an elder statesman that he clearly looks up to. And he was like literally following him around. He gave Putin a huge hug. They had these private exchanges that Korean media was really eating up. And what it makes me think of, if we're right about North Korea has been a proxy state for a long time, right? For a long time. Certainly for the current leader's whole life.
Yeah.
Whether it's CCP, CIA, it's a deep state proxy, right? Kim Jong-un is really not a leader. He's somebody who was groomed to be a puppet of an evil regime. Those strings, we believe, were cut so that he is free. But it stands to reason that not only would Russia want to wield some influence over the new North Korea, it also stands to reason that Kim needs help, right? He needs, he's not a real leader, but in that culture where saving face is such a huge thing, Kim has to be seen. The Sovereign Alliance needs Kim Jong-un to be a leader, but they have to help him become one. And I think that you saw, even going back years, you saw some of this relationship and energy from Donald Trump to Kim, where Trump kind of had this almost fatherly vibe toward him of, you're doing a great job. We want big things for North Korea. I think that's for the cameras. I think that's for the story. But I genuinely think that Kim needs help. He needs guidance. He needs somebody like a Putin to come in and say, listen, there's going to be a lot of shit that you're going to deal with, but we're going to help you out. We're here. We're going to work some shit out. You've got smart people around you, and we're going to make this happen. We're going to do what's right for the Korean people. All that you need out of Kim is that he's got the name and that he's a good man. That's all the Sovereign Alliance needs out of him. And then the next leader that comes up in Korea will probably be from the ground up much more capable of doing these kinds of things.
I want to...
You have something to say, Kyle?
Or reunification. I was going to say, or reunification. Because ultimately, that's the way you solve the North Korea, South Korea problem for good, for generations to come, is that they reunify. But you can't, that can't happen tomorrow, or else both countries are going to be worse off for it. Probably it's going to be way worse. So
culture.
I totally agree, man. I think you're making an excellent point that Putin can go in there, and you're making a great point about Kim and what he was raised in. It really is like a look back at like the way things were done with kings and queens and princes and whatnot, inheriting the throne, and them suddenly having all this power, but they were like a child.
They were supposed to be a puppet
and stuff, and so they're not really in charge, but the people think they are, but really it's the people who are older and more experienced.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that point is really well made and appreciated when we're considering
Get a room, you two.
Well, it helps reframe, like when you can, like the elder statesmen who were actually running North Korea, they were deep state, they were leveraged by deep state, but they also were actually running the country. So when they're gone, you're left with, it's good that they're gone, but Kim's left with this power vacuum, and you can't just have a bunch of Americans and Russians in there running North Korea, right? So I think that they're trying to help him by proxy sort of become that leader.
Okay, I want to keep going here with some of the stuff. Another interesting point that O'Brien made. Do you guys remember? This was back in December. We did a power hour and we talked about. I was trying to find the whole time you guys were talking. I was trying to find where Trump made a comment, but it was Trump and O'Brien. They both made comments about Iran being super close to having nuclear capabilities. Yes. I have what O'Brien said back in December here. Let me pull this up.
Well, I can tell you, and without getting into the details, the Iranians are very close to having a nuclear weapon, and they're very close to being able to put it on a delivery system to menace Israel or our ships in the Red Sea or the Persian Gulf. But think about this.
So again, back in December, in this article, he brings it up again, and this time he puts he makes it like direct how long they have. Iran has now amassed enough enriched uranium to build a basic nuclear weapon in less than 2 weeks if it chose to do so, according to the estimates. So I thought that was interesting. He brought that up again because I don't believe we've seen the nuclear scare event yet, but I do believe we will prior to this upcoming election. I think we're going to see something. We've had Russia like within eyesight of Miami or whatever. That narrative has been going around doing those missile tests down in
that clickbait that was like everybody knew that was happening a couple years ago.
Yep, but still, it's the narrative of it. I think it's for a reason. I mean, we're going to see a scare event, or at least something that we were told is nuclear scare. Yeah, I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, if it needs to be real or actual, whatever. We'll see, but I think that's coming. So I thought it was interesting he mentioned that in here.
One note on what you just said about the scare event. One of the most hilarious contradictions in the last couple days in the media was there were headlines talking about the very scary nuclear submarine in Korea running parallel with other headlines talking about how Russia's nuclear submarine was falling apart as it was leaving Cuba. So they couldn't agree on whether it was about to blow up the United States or whether Russia's submarines don't work.
Of course. God, there's one more point I wanted to make about here. I think it was about Saudi Arabia, because one of the big things that they mentioned in here was the Middle East, and how basically the Biden administration has basically like siloed Saudi Arabia, and but that's like part of the sovereign alliance. Like we look at them for so much, and I can't freaking find the quote now.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's right here.
I wish Ghost would do research into Saudi Arabia. He's so ignorant about it.
I know,
it's like,
right?
The guy just like, he hates the Saudis.
Here it is. Another region where the Biden administration has demonstrated little strength and thus brought little peace is the Middle East. Biden entered office determined to ostracize Saudi Arabia for human rights violations, but also to resume the Obama-era policy of negotiating with Iran, a far worse violator of human rights, which it's still interesting to me that the Biden administration campaigned on getting back into the Iran nuclear deal, tried to get into the Iran nuclear deal while the United States military was bombing Iranian-backed officials, but they were never able to successfully get back into that deal. Why would that be? And then you have Trump doing that interview where he has to go deal with the Afghanistan. You have the papers that were found during the Mar-a-Lago raid having to do with
toilet papers.
The toilet papers, yeah. The Trump shredded up the stuff and put it in the toilet, but didn't flush it down.
That's
but
what
no,
a
but
gorilla
also
would do, John.
I think
remember
it's count 9 is the Iran document.
The
that
Iran
mentions the
document's the
nuclear
plan.
capability. Yeah.
Well, it's not just that; it was that plan that was to be carried out while Biden was in office.
Yeah, and
that
he was
Trump
like, this
initiated.
is the plan. Look at this. He's talking. He's at Bedminster and he's talking to
Yep.
the authors. And he's being recorded. It's not clear if Trump knew he was being recorded in an interview
Trump
with two
always
authors who are
knows.
obviously writing a book, and they're recording the interview. Yeah.
So stupid. But then there's one more quote in here where I thought was interesting, talking about, gosh dang it, protesters and stuff, because it was such a good quote.
Palestine protesters.
I think it was right here. In January 2020, after I publicly expressed hope that the people of Iran would someday be able to choose their own leaders, Trump followed up on social media, "Don't kill your protesters," which made me think of J6 for the Babbitts or whatever. He admonished the theocrats in Tehran. A second Trump term would see stepped up presidential level attention to dissidents and political forces that can challenge U.S. adversaries. This effort would build on past actions, such as when Trump's Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, get a little shout out to Kansas here, and other senior officials met with activists seeking freedom in China, and when Deputy National Security Advisor Matt Pottinger addressed the Chinese people in Mandarin from the White House and gave a voice to many of their concerns about the repressive rule of the Chinese Communist Party. And that just made me think of in part 16 of my series. Do you guys remember the whole book, President Trump on China, putting America first, and all of these administration officials? I think Pottinger was one of them. He's mentioned right here. Yep, he was. Interesting. Robert O'Brien likes Mr. Pottinger.
Also, kind of weirdly makes me think of the little assault on the White House lawn during Trump 1.0, where you had Mandarin-speaking protesters who were on that lawn as well.
Well, and then this goes on even more. I mean, that's spot on, Bernie Bright, but this goes even further. Read this or listen to this as if he's actually talking about Trump being indicted as the leading political opponent of Joe Biden. Some might say that it is hypocritical for the United States to condemn some repressive governments, such as those in China and Iran, while partnering with others, such as Arab non-democracies. I think, like, when he's saying something like this, it is extremely hypocritical for the United States to condemn anybody when we're potentially imprisoning political opponents here. But it is important to consider countries' capacities to change. Most Arab monarchies today are more open and liberal than they were 10 or 20 years ago, partly because of engagement with the United States. Same cannot be said of Chinese or Iranian governments. They also go in on this article about the Taliban, partnering with the Taliban, the whole Doha agreement and stuff. I mean, this whole op-ed is very worthwhile.
Yeah.
So much Devo adjacent topics. It's fascinating, guys.
On the Taliban, I know that we read this stuff a lot, but just in case anybody hasn't seen it come across their radar much, tons of news articles going around about recent meetings between both Russia and China and the Taliban. So obviously Trump had the Doha agreement, But and most of us believe that these agreements have been in place quite a while ago. But the narrative is that Russia is really partnering strongly with the Taliban, and that the Taliban are helping Russia make inroads with repairing relationships with Pakistan. And to Kyle's regions of responsibility terminology there, Pakistan is seen as a key in that region of acting as an intermediary between Russia and India. And actually speaking, I mean, this stuff is it goes so far, right? It goes in so many different directions. But one thing to keep an eye on is the media who loved Narendra Modi, the president of India. They've done a rapid turn on him lately since he won his most recent term. And I would say that, just going out on a limb, it's because he's been real friendly to Russia post-Ukraine and real friendly to China. He's part of BRICS, and they figured out that he's not their guy, right? So there's been a few cases of that where I think Xi is the major one. They thought he was their guy. He was never their guy. And I think Modi's another one.
I do want to read how he closes the very last paragraph of this. And I just, guys, want you to think, in the whole purpose of devolution was to basically unite the country against a common enemy, which is the establishment, right? Trump had all the evidence and the reasons to interdict in Biden's inauguration. He didn't do so because of how divided we were. So listen to O'Brien, and a guy who I believe is in on the plan, and what he says here. Can an American revival occur today in a divided nation when polls indicate that a vast majority of citizens believe their country is on the wrong track? As Reagan's election in 1980 demonstrated, the United States can always turn things around. In November, the American people will have the opportunity to return to office a president who restored peace through strength and who can do it again. If they do, the country has the resources, the ingenuity, and the courage to rebuild its national power, securing its freedom, and once again becoming the last best hope for humankind. Is that a moon? What is that at the end there?
I think it's just their symbol.
Is that their symbol? I gotta scroll up. I don't know what that is.
Like a horse. It's a guy on a horse, I think.
I think that's proof that the earth is round right there, guys. I think that's what that is. No, but yeah, it's just fascinating stuff, guys. Go read this if you haven't yet. I highly encourage you to do so. You guys ready for the rants? It is midnight where I'm at. All right.
SCOTUS decisions tomorrow and Friday. I like the way people are posting, from Mark Elias to Norm Eisen to the media articles that are coming out over the past few days. I really think SCOTUS is about to give Trump a huge win.
Well, it would follow the pattern in recent years, right?
Yes.
Well,
yes,
and
so it's going to be exciting end of the week.
Think of what they've been doing to Alito recently with the flag stuff. Like, they've been trying to get rid of him. But then also keep in mind, we know there's a leaker at SCOTUS. They leaked, was it the Dobbs decision or?
Yes.
Yeah, they leaked it. They never found out who it was. The person is still there. So whatever decision is about to come, you know that it's been leaked. You know they know it's coming. And that's why they've been doing all this shenanigans. So
yeah,
John, to that point, share my screen. I didn't read this earlier, but I saw this headline. Look what they're trying to seed. Amy Coney Barrett may be poised to split conservatives on the Supreme Court. Legal experts see signs of, quote, raging philosophical debate among the court's supermajority. So they're trying to seed some schism going on within the Supreme Court.
That'll be interesting. I can't imagine.
I think it's a bunch of bullshit. It's going to be my boy to Clarence Thomas.
We'll see what happens. Okay, let's Pretty much freezing up there. I don't know.
Am I?
Yeah, you did. For a little bit. Okay, we'll do the rants here and then get you guys out of here. VP Nichols says, cheap fake videos of Biden. Are you sure they're not calling Biden a cheap fake? You don't like that. 1027 JS says, good evening and thank you. Thank you, Joe. A fellow North Dakotan there. Dal76 says, DEI is a psyop, division to hate women and minorities. Just saying, be careful with that narrative deployment as well. Canadians ain't commies. Tons of MAGA. Much love from Alberta. Is that your mother-in-law?
Yeah, I know. I mean, they're kind of commies, though. You can admit it.
Dot Kenny, I stand corrected. It was in Trump's speech in Michigan, listened on Red Pill. talked about sharks and soon after mentioned burning bright. Check it out. Oh, he's aware.
Did he talk about sharks in that speech too?
I think it was just the one speech.
He did. What did he nominate Burning Bright for? Like head of liberty or something?
No, he said something about something liberty will be burning bright.
The flame of liberty.
Oh, he called me the flame of liberty. That's what it was.
That's how I would describe you.
Thanks.
Tom Terrific. This is an interesting take on the election. That's the clip we played from Shipwreck Show. EC was here. It is literally impossible to, quote, use the 25th Amendment to remove anyone from office. I don't understand, but because it's not true.
I don't know, man. There's a Substack about it.
Written by the guy who left the Rumble rant. But thank you for the rant. Appreciate it. Ziggy Girl, Trump took a poll. Who would he win in 2020? Biden or Sanders? He chose Joe. Where do you think we would be if Sanders won? Coincidence?
There has been a lot of retrospectives lately in the Dem establishment talking about how they prevented Bernie Sanders. It's funny how they just say that straight up now. Like Dem strategists talk about how they pulled out all the stops to stop Bernie Sanders in 2016. It's like, wait, guys, you said you didn't do this. And now you're like, yeah, one of the greatest things we did in the last few election cycles was rug pulling all the Bernie bros.
Razor Sharp says Trump is still under a gag order at the debate. How can that be?
He can still communicate. He just can't communicate about that case.
He just has to wear a gag for the whole debate.
Yeah, he can't say anything ever again.
Not a gag.
He can wear a gag if he wants to. Stop being a fag, okay? Saltmuncher ODA. Cheap fake is Orwellian. The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command.
And that stuff is going viral. I mean, I saw that quote. You know, there's layers and layers to the info war, and the cheap fake deployment out of the establishment is not going well for them because you've got a lot of normies just being like, I mean, we're looking at him, and it doesn't seem great. So you can kind of say whatever you want, but it just doesn't look great.
That's why I think the debates are so important, and why I think we're going to see a huge distinction between the two, because you can see with your own eyes how bad Biden is doing. But if you're like a leftist, your portrayal of Trump is what the mainstream media tells you. And the mainstream media is telling you right now that Trump is like incoherent. He can't formulate sentences. Like they're describing Trump as all the things that is actually Joe Biden. And so I think the distinction of how bad Joe Biden is compared to Trump is an important one that we will see at these debates. Much, much worse than we saw in 2020. Papa DB1 says, the fact that the old fart is going to get sent out to pasture, I really want the rest of that treasonous family and all of their surrogates to be held accountable to the fullest extent. I think we all want justice, and I think we'll get it. Sparrow64, regarding state of Kansas suing Pfizer, their AG spoke in detail, including Pfizer did not participate in Operation Warp Speed and declined all federal funding. This absolves Trump. Agree?
There's probably some of the legal angles that, you know, if we do see damages.
Absolve Trump of what, though?
Well, I mean, I don't like that framing either way, but maybe, again, we're talking about public narrative, right? If the public narrative and public disclosure of what some of these pharmaceuticals were involved with is that they turned down, testing that would have been funded by the federal government and some of these sorts of things, that could be good, damaging for them.
Yeah. I don't know. I think he's already absolved of all that shit. Operation Warp Speed is, I think it's different than what some people might tell you. Another 179. Thank you, John, Kyle, and BB. Thank you. Razor Sharp. So is the RNC going to try to give the nomination to someone else, such as DeSantis? Jenna Ellis sure hope so. We shall see, though.
Some people think that, yeah. Some people think there is a plot to do that. Good thing the Trump-DeSantis thing is kayfabe. So I don't think it'll work out too well for them.
Maybe we'll see. We'll see what the RNC tries to do. I mean,
she's all the way in there, man. She just
Jenna Ellis.
She's in the take bunker. She's
barricading
the take bunker. Everybody else got out. She was like, "Guys, you're coming back, right?" And they're like, "Totally, Jenna." We're gonna just have a little stopover at Vivek's, and then we're gonna go back onto the Trump train. But we will definitely come back.
Her Twitter feed is something else. It's crazy. Sleep State. Hello. I see a Mohap, Ola, Chow. There's a bunch of different languages, but thank you, Sleep State. Patriot Page. Love DPH. Caught my first episode of Defected. Should be called Distracted with Kyle and BB. JK. Watch Distracted regularly. By the way, you guys are not doing a show this weekend? Right?
Yes. There will be no show this weekend, guys. It was originally
tried.
entirely Kyle's fault. Then it became 60% Kyle's fault.
Maybe I'll
back
do one of my recap series then, because I didn't do one last week and I kept saying I'm going to make up for it, but I haven't yet. So
John, don't make the bad news worse for the audience.
I like that series.
I mean, we could sell our slot to him, depending on the price.
We'll give
He
you.
might be available.
Okay, we'll talk after.
Let's negotiate.
After
Yeah,
the
we'll
show.
talk.
Mike Benz, 848-18825. Hope that's not your phone number. It says Mike Benz says Hunter is a CIA asset.
Does. I know.
Starborn.
They might have gone to some of the same training classes together on the farm. I don't know. So he might know. They could have been in some of the same classes.
Starborn01 says, I know what BB can do for locals only content. Watching all Batman movies and giving us commentary. We'll watch that.
Imagine me and Chris Paul trying to do commentary track, pausing the movie.
Oh my God.
42 hours into Batman Begins.
can't
Opening
imagine.
credits.
It'd be insane. John Henry Bonzo says he is our retribution and he is Batman. Be well and God bless you all. Thank you, John.
Vengeance.
Melindy, not gonna lie, I've gotten about a third through our O'Brien piece and his takes on Russia are disappointing. Okay, we covered this.
I read that one.
Thank you, Melindy.
How wrong you are, Melindy. Ugh.
Valseco 16 pop ball out to right field. Here comes Bright calling it from left field only to pull up 17 feet short, asking why Just Human didn't get it. Still like him though. Yeah, why did you do that, Brandon?
I
Bright?
don't know.
Did we miss a play? Did I miss a play?
I guess, man.
I might have been distracted.
I might not have been paying attention when that happened. Space Wanderer 77. Major Devolution themes get revisited and updated on a yearly basis, and every year we win new converts 5x5. I would say it's updated more often than that.
Here's the Fredo avalanche of Fredo bullshit.
I was wondering if Fredo was here. Fredo, hi all. Little perturbed. Not one DM call text. Wish me happy Juneteenth. I forgot it was. Is it after Juneteenth now? Oh, we missed it. It's
Did you send
12:01.
your reparations in?
I thought that's what like just me existing and paying tax and all those things. That's my reparations.
Oh, man, you got to give more.
Was I supposed to do something else like to honor Juneteenth?
Just reparations.
Okay.
I read a whole. Well, I didn't read. I read a few words of an article in Newsweek talking about how California's push for reparations just hasn't been going well, and they don't understand why.
I wonder. Well, I'll send in 2 reparations next year to make up for this year's.
Yeah, that's good.
Anyway, I don't know what the F it is. Very upset for a reason I can't identify. Bigots. Thank you, Fredo. Fredo Awakening still the 19th here as I type in California. Twerking as I type Juneteenth. Get yours. Reparations. Get yours. Still insane. People campaign on that shit. Carrie Pajan, great show, gentlemen. Great read on North Korea and Kim Jong-un, BB. He needs a mentor. Shit looks worse right before it resolves for the best. Good analysis by all tonight. Shout out to Sally in San Antonio. Hey, Sally.
Yo, what up, Sally?
Space Wanderer 77. I want my reparations paid in gold crudgerins and thank you for that. Am I going to finish it?
Super specific. Gold Krugerrands, and you're not going to read it, man?
Okay. Well, you can read it.
No, you read it. It was for you.
Kyle, you want to read it?
I can't even see it right now. So
I'll give you the $1 Brandon Bread if you read it.
So Space Wanderer wants his reparations paid in gold Krugerrands and big titty goth girls.
Dude,
I don't know what the proportion is, though. How much proportion of one to the
what
other?
nation state operates on that currency system? Anybody know? Because that
Kyle's
could be good.
Saving a bookmark.
Yes. Yes.
Oh my God, you guys are so mature.
I am now interested in that rant.
Incited the erection.
Makes sense to me too. Says, great job tonight, gents. There's been a ton of narrative seeding of a terrorist attack on American soil for the past few days from CIA, FBI, and just a couple days ago, Axios. That's where I'm looking. It's not been days. It's been like a couple of years or decades now that they've
every 3
been,
weeks.
Yeah, seeding that.
Yeah.
It's coming. They're going to use. There's two avenues that I think they're going to try to not hold the elections, and one of them is terrorist attacks. Like, we have evidence or intelligence that some terror groups are going to be targeting polling locations. So until this threat passes, we can't hold the elections. That's one. And two is our infrastructure has been hacked or whatever, and we cannot hold the election because of that. That one's probably more likely.
I really think, like, big picture though, as far as like how attacks factor into Trump coming back, I don't think that the story works well with Trump getting back in office. Just like it didn't work well with him getting back in office on a technicality, I don't think it works well with him getting back in office because some attack happens and things are thrown into question, and suddenly Trump is up by 10 points because people are scared and they want him back. Like something, like something like that. Like, I think Trump has to be, for us, this to have a lasting impact on our nation. It's a generational impact. It has to be a recognized return of Trump because the American people demand he come back. So like, however that
to stop it.
I'm saying,
but like however that fear factor of like the nuclear scare event or whatever it is plays in, I don't think it plays in a way that leads to Trump specifically being elected because of that one thing.
That's not what I was saying. I was saying,
I know you're not. I'm just like trying to give like a big picture thing. Like, I think it's a factor, but in the end, the statement has to be made. The American people want him back, and they make that statement at the ballot box, I think.
The will of the people. Yeah. I'm saying, like, the enemy is going to pull out all the stops to either steal the election, but when they see that's unfeasible, because I don't like, it's going to be very difficult for them to pass it off as a legitimate steal. They're going to try to not have the election like they did in Ukraine. Like what Blinken said when he was over there, we're not going to have an election here until every Ukraine gets the opportunity to have his voice heard at the ballot box or whatever. They're going to pull some of that bullshit here with for whatever reason they come up with, whether it's a terror attack or something. I mean, I could totally see that happening.
Some swing state. It's going to happen that there's a hack in the voting election system, like in some swing state.
Yeah, I think a hack is what it's going to be.
They can't finalize the electoral count, and
they've seeded that narrative so many times already with China and the ports.
Yeah, they're going to blame it on China.
Where are we at? Fred Awakening, off topic, but would appreciate prayers for my kitty Bishop. Has a disease and not eating lately. Not ready to lose him. Not that I'll ever be ready to lose him. Prayers for him, man.
Sorry to hear that, man.
Sorry to hear that.
Thoughts for Bishop. That's a cool name.
That's a good name.
And then Fred Awakening, 2 more here, says Donald J. Trump reading the Ashley diary at the debate would be epic. Could be. Not the whole thing, but maybe the shower chapter or whatever. And then Fred Awakening again. Night all. Love you all. Egg specially, BB.
Thanks, Fredo. I like you for just right now.
Just for that rant. All right, guys. That's all we got. We appreciate you for tuning in. Make sure you guys tune in next week. Hit that thumbs up. Forgot to mention that. As Patrick would say, we have not hoarded for likes nearly enough tonight. Carrie Prajan says, John, must you read my rants in super fast Dakotan speak? I'm not sure what you said. Read my rants in slower Southern speech, please. You sounded like Charlie Brown's teacher reading my rant. I will read your rant however I damn well please, okay? Carrie Prajan?
It's almost like hearing Dakotan swear.
If you don't like how
Daganab, please.
If you don't like how I read your rants, if I read them too fast, you can
gosh dang
slow it
silly
down.
goose.
But thank you for the rant. Thank you for the $10 just to criticize me. I appreciate that. Do I got an outro video? Don't think I do. Wow. I think I deleted some of.
Jeez.
I don't know what to do. I really don't know what to do. Hold on. Let me see if I got any good ones here.
Big titty goth videos. We can.
Oh, I should check if let's see if Green Star sent anything over. Sometimes he does that. No. What?
Salt Muncher told Capridging to type slower. Type the rant slower.
There we go. Yeah, Karabajan, suck it.
This is stupid humor, but it makes me laugh so much.
Oh man, I don't have anything. So I'm just gonna play the intro video as the outro since I don't have anything else. So good night, everybody.
Watch Cultural Heretics tomorrow, guys. 2 p.m. Eastern. Me and Julian's Rum gonna be weird.
You always are. Okay, see you, everybody.
See ya.
Badlands, what are the Badlands? Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.